Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings. Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade, here to share constructive information on racism, white supremacy. Had some brief technical difficulties getting the program together. I was actually getting my tickets punched for the White Privilege Conference. Please forgive the delay in the beginning of the program. I believe the Irritated Genie. I saw him on the switchboard while I was getting connected. We'll see if I can get him back with us so we can begin the program. Hang tight for 1 second, and yeah, we should be good to go. Hang tight.
Is racism hurting you?
Okay.
On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Okay. Context of white supremacy. Gus T Renegade just got an email from Irritated Genie, so he should be giving us a ring right back so we can begin with the program. Again, my apologies. I was not being shiftless on the plantation. I was meeting with the admitted white supremacist known as John Delport, discussing my itinerary for the White Privilege Conference coming up next week. Hopefully all that should be nailed down and taken care of. So, yeah, that's what I was doing prior to the program. And to have a lot of people on the line here, and I want to see if Irritated Genie is one of the folks I have here. Yeah, the folks who called in, I'm just making sure that I have a line for Irritated Genie. Once he calls in, everything is good. So if you get bumped off and you called in to listen to the program on the phone, if you get bumped off, don't worry about it. Just call back in as soon as Irritated Genie dials in with us. Shouldn't be a problem. Let me make sure. 478, you can hear me? I'm just checking to make sure I'm being
Yeah,
heard.
I can hear you.
Okay, outstanding. We should be good to go. Thank you for on the program mic check. Okay. Just sent Irritated Genie another. Oh, I think we got him. Right on, for patience. Am I speaking with Irritated Genie?
Yes, you are, brother. How you doing, brother?
Outstanding. Thank you for your patience, sir. Okay. Set the program up correctly. I heard about our guest for today's program from Dr. Kamal Cambone. I hope listeners are familiar with his work. He has stuff up on YouTube. He has many articles online. He's written several books dedicated to replacing white supremacy, white domination with justice as soon as possible. I was speaking with him about a week ago, and he shared a lot of information. Along with that information, he told me about our guest for today, his work, and he highly recommended the book. He said he checked out several of his video presentations. He thought it was very professional, very informative, and he felt that his focus on the sexual confusion that is being heaped on non-white people was extremely important, extremely relevant, and he said that I should make an effort to get him on the program as soon as possible. Spoke with him, I made an effort to contact him about a week ago, and here we are, able to pull it off pretty quickly. I'm thrilled to have him on the program. I hope everybody will get copies of the book, War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault. The webpage is linked in the description for this program. Please check it out. Please support the efforts. Our guest for today's program, the Irritated Genie. Thank you so much for joining us and being patient with the tech issues, sir.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the battlefield. How you doing, brother?
I am still learning, and still being mistreated in the system of white supremacy.
Yeah, that's an everyday thing for most of us. I want to thank you for the introduction, and I also want to thank you for doing this program. And I know a lot of times our people wonder why it is that serious people are constantly talking about racism, white supremacy. Why won't you talk about something different? You know, why is that what you're stuck on? Mature people discuss the most important issues facing and confronting their communities. The most important issues facing African people on this planet is our survival. And the critical thing that exists in this universe that threatens the survival of African people is no virus, is no lack of information. The critical problem that exists on this planet is a system developed and maintained by whites, Europeans, with the ultimate design and end to be the genocide of African people. And that means all black people. And so it would make sense that we would have brothers like yourself that would take time out with the African family, with our brothers and sisters, and begin to understand the system so that once we can properly understand our system, then we can, like you do in any war, you understand the circumstances and the battlefield that you're on, and you begin to work on your side to the best interest of your group.
I agree wholeheartedly. I hope that's what's being accomplished with this program. I always tell my audience, if you're not getting constructive information that's helpful to you, please do not waste your time on this program. Please, start your own program or listen to someone else, because I hope we're giving out relevant information to help replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. I want to hop right into your material so we can cover as much ground as possible. I begin every program with my definition of racism, white supremacy. I use both of those terms interchangeably, racism and white supremacy, and the definition that I use for both terms is as follows. A global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you believe that that definition is accurate?
I believe that such a system exists, and I am comfortable with that definition, and the only thing that I would say to the definition is that the ultimate end of, at the end of that, the intentions of what they're doing is the genocide of African people, meaning after they abuse people, the end result is the physical death and non-existence of those people.
Wow. Okay. Well, I want to make sure. Do you want to give them your definition? I know yours is slightly different. You want to give them your full definition?
And I would. I'd give the definition, but I will say that, to me, that is a very workable, usable definition. In fact, quite frankly, to his credit, let me say, one of my main teachers in the sense of people who I studied to understand the system of racism, white supremacy. In fact, I will say he was foundational in my understanding and observation of what we're dealing with is Millie Fuller. So much of what I'm saying, much of who I am as a person is built off the intellectual capacity and fruits that was given to me by a man who had already laid down the groundwork. The definition that I use, and we developed this when I was with an organization called Positive Comedic Vision, so I did not develop this for my own. I want to give credit to the organization for developing it. But first we said whites. We identified what whites are by our definition. We said that whites are a barbaric race of subhumans whose inherent disposition is the destruction of all life. We say subhumans not as an insult, but because hue represents color, the same as chlorophyll represents that which gives the grass its green color. Melanin is what gives us our hue, and the European has an abnormally low amount of hue or melanin, thus making them subhuman, underneath the normal standards of melanin that we, through observation, see that people who have higher doses of melanin traditionally throughout the course of history have been a balanced people. You have good, bad, war, peace, where we see the European has had no balance. So we say whites are a barbaric race of subhumans whose inherent disposition is the destruction of all life. So when we talk about all life, we say people, plants, animals, the air, anything that lives and wants to continue to exist in the way that it exists. Europeans come in, disrupt, and ultimately kill or destroy that. As a second part of that definition, as you said, it's a collective group of individuals calling themselves whites, classifying themselves as whites. We call the system racism, white supremacy. Racism, white supremacy is a system developed by whites to conquer, exploit, and annihilate all non-white people on planet Earth. So we look at it as having three stages. The conquest stage, where they come in, they violate, they shoot, they murder, they torture, they rape, they violate, they kill. Then there's an exploitation period, and that period can be a very short period, depending on if they want to totally take over the landmass or not, or if they're just coming and passing and want to exploit and enrich themselves through your slave labor and through using your resource base or your country as a sexual play toy, or for whatever they want to use it as a playground. The more they want to use it as a playground, the longer that period of exploitation lasts. They begin to destroy you culturally, take away your morals, your ethics, your ideas, your cultural practices, your foods, your language, these things. And ultimately, once they've gotten their way and had enough with that, they ultimately make the decision that it is time then, when they have decided so, that they will exterminate that group. And that has generally been the case throughout the course of history with any groups that have not developed themselves militarily to a degree where they could defend themselves against European interests.
Again, our guest for today's program, the Irritated Genie, and the book, please get the book, War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault. Before we get directly into the book and some of the things you talk about in your presentations, I did want to double check. You are a black male, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would it be accurate to say that you are a victim of racism, white supremacy? And when I say that, I just mean that you have been mistreated because you are not white?
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess if you could give us some of the background information in terms of how you got started putting this book together, War on the Horizon, like what motivated you to do this work?
Okay, I want to tell you that. And I'll start back with, things that happened in my early life. When I was, I went to high school at a private school in Massachusetts. And there were only a few black people there, and there was a young lady there. She and I were like best friends. And she told me that I was the only person that she was ever sharing this with. But she told me that she had been sexually abused. And that it was her uncle down in Jamaica, he had raped her when she was in Jamaica, a cousin, an uncle, something of that nature. She was like 11 or 12 or 13, very, very tender young age. And I got this overwhelming spirit of anger and rage, and had a feeling of vengeance. Anybody that would target a child for abuse, I felt like, this is the worst kind of monster the world has ever seen. So that's kind of like the first time that I could say I remember in my teenage life having something. I said, there's something I know that I want to do. I want to stop any child from getting sexually abused. I had no idea the extent to it, but I just thought that it was just something that was unthinkable. And she was close to me, so it meant a lot to me. As I got more mature and I was reading books I had been exposed throughout my life to Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam and Nat Turner and our struggle, I began to want to become more active. And as I did, I joined an organization called Positive Comedic Vision. And that organization still exists today, very powerful organization in the Washington, D.C. area. And the organization, the brothers in the organization were talking about how they knew so many sisters that had been sexually abused, and that was the issue for them, and they wanted to make this stop and organize so that we could stop it nationally, because they said, this is a real problem larger than one or two people. All the women, not all, but a significant portion, significant percentage, I would say, in my life, maybe 60 to 70% of the women that I've had personal conversations with at some point in time have said they've been sexually abused. So it was a major issue to us. And I felt the same way that they felt, so it was a consensus there that this is something I want to be part of. As we began to move the organization and begin to speak to the people and throw lectures and talk to people and dialogue about what the condition was going on, we were also noticing an increase in homosexuality. And so as a young speaker, I really hadn't become a speaker yet, but a brother asked me to just go say a few things on homosexuality. Well, I'm one of those people that like to try to know what I'm talking about. So I went and did a little research to see, okay, where did homosexuality come from? And where did this pedophilia come from? I didn't even put the two together, actually. So I went and did a little research, and I came across this thing called NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association. And it talked about these grown males who believed that it was okay to have sex with children.
Can you give us the name of that organization again, please, sir?
Yes, sir. It's called NAMBLA, N-A-M-B-L-A, NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association. So when I came across this NAMBLA, it was like I was at my job. I was working in the government at the time, actually, and I live in D.C. So most people in this area, if they have a job, they work for the government. So I'm working there, and I'm on my internet looking this thing up, and I'm like, this can't be real. And so I began to do more research to try to figure out, okay, where's the origin of pedophilia and homosexuality? And it was like the floodgates opened into an entirely new world. Well, it wasn't new. It was a new world to me. It was like I had gone into a matrix because I began to study the origins, and it took me right to Greece. It took me to a story, the ancient love story of Europe. And this is when it became very, very interesting, because I was looking at it from the perspective of why do we have so much homosexuality in the black community. When I go to find out the origin, it directly takes me to Europe, and I find out that the ancient love story of Europe was a spiritual story of their supreme god named Zeus and his major love interest called Ganymede, which was a little boy. Ganymede is spelled G-A-N-Y-M-E-D-E. So if you go in right now into your search engine and put in Zeus, Z-E-U-S, and Ganymede, G-A-N-Y-M-E-D-E, you will come up with multitudes of discussions that verify and validate what I'm saying to you. That the ancient love story, and I want people to understand, we're not talking about this as one story. This was the Romeo and Juliet of the ancient white world. Once they got literature, once they were able to have a language and have art, once they learned these disciplines from African people, this is what they came up with, that their supreme god Zeus looked down on planet Earth and saw this little irresistible boy named Ganymede. And so he turned himself into an eagle. He kidnapped Ganymede from Earth, took him to Mount Olympus, where he repeatedly sodomized him and turned him into his lover. And this was the story of love in Europe. So I'm reading this and I'm going, this is the most bizarre, unbelievable thing I've ever seen. So I'm trying to verify, because I'm thinking this is coming from some whack job that maybe, he's a homosexual or pedophile and he wants to put that on a culture or civilization. And I began to do more research and find out that it was not just a story, but that was only the tip of the iceberg, and that the European sexual construct was absolutely and completely different in its entirety from African culture and sexual history. And even more than that, until the Greeks invaded Kemet and came in on a large scale under Alexander the Greek, 323 BC, they didn't even know that there was a such thing called a man being in love with a woman. Meaning in ancient Europe, prior to having access to African people, the only reason you had sex with a female was to produce a child. And it was only something you had to do. But there was no such thing as love, meaning a spiritual connection to a woman between a man and a woman. It didn't exist in Europe. In fact, Plato, one of the early philosophers in Greece, said, and they used the term called pederasty. They didn't call it homosexuality because it wasn't between a grown man and two grown men. It was primarily between a grown man and a little boy. And he said pederasty alone is capable of satisfying a man's highest and noblest aspirations. And the love between man and woman, when spoken of at all, is altogether inferior. It is a purely physical impulse whose sole object is the procreation of life. Now, this is in his Symposium. Many of us have heard the thing called the Symposium. And if you read that, he basically is talking about the philosophy of Europeans, how they view the world, and not necessarily knowing that the rest of the world would view that as some sadistic type of backwards kind of behavior. Europeans were a little more free with what they were doing then. In fact, until what they call the Hellenistic period, they didn't even have a statue of a man and woman being in love. They didn't even have a statue of it. All the statues were grown males being with little boys and males, a bunch of male-to-male sexual relations. They didn't even have portraits, any of that stuff, till they came into Africa. This is all verifiable information. So after I began to do that, then, of course, the logical thing was, well, why am I seeing an increase in homosexuality in America? And as I began to study deeper into it and study the slave trade, it began to become very apparent that homosexuality and child sexual abuse, one were one and the same, because it originated at grown male with little boy as European culture, but that historically speaking, part of European warfare is to rape young boys and to rape the men of any culture. That is part of the discipline of European warfare, meaning this is not something that one or two cultures have done. In fact, the French were known very well for raping the men first. That was what the French were known for. Hey, when we come into a country, we're going to rape the men first before we get to the women. So I'm saying this is an established part of European warfare. And so the targeting of men for sexual brutality and the cultural practice of men being with other males, particularly young males, begins to look very different when you understand that the individuals that we talk about and classify as, will classify themselves as white, and who have this system that we call racism, white supremacy, to know that this is part and parcel of their system of abuse and violation of other groups on the planet, because you have to figure out, okay, how much a part of their war system is this? And so just like we said, the initial thing was, why are people being sexually abused in the black community? why is the homosexuality on the rise, I began to study it differently, not from the perspective of, oh, this is happening, what's going on, but what is the warfare that is going on that is creating this in our communities? And the study of slavery made it very, very apparent that this is a systematic process. For instance, many of us know that they raped many of our women on a regular basis. That was, according to my best guesstimations, 75% of black women during the course of enslavement in America were raped. It was just a basic part of the way of life for black women in this society. That would be my estimation. I also estimate that at least 25% of the males were sexually abused as well. They actually had places. Yes, sir. Because what we don't understand is that is the centerpiece in European sexuality. And so when I began to do the research, I said, wow, we have to understand they had places called sex farms. And on these sex farms, and these are all verifiable things that you can research. They actually had a movie where they showed a lot of these and reenacted them. And it was called Goodbye, Uncle Tom. It was done back in the 70s. But they literally, white males could come from all around the country, sometimes all around the world, and they could go and they could buy black women. They could buy little black girls for sexuals. Or they could buy little boys. But the little boys were most expensive. And they would put perfume on the little boys. They would grease them up. They would train them on all kind of sexual acts. And literally homosexual white males would come and buy these little boys and take them back to their plantations. Many times they would have plantations full of so many little boys that what they would do is they would keep them. It would be mostly little boys on these plantations. These would be rich slave owners that didn't need, they didn't have the same need for picking cotton. They may have had some other industry they were involved in. And basically what they would do is they would keep the boys from maybe 5 to 12 or whatever age they liked them, and then they would sell them off after that. And then they would just buy new ones because they wanted the ones at the age that they liked to use them. Mm. We also, I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
No, sir, I was just, I'm soaking it in. Please continue, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we realized that was occurring. At the same time, they had things called breeding farms. Now, this is also well documented. If you go in on the net now, you can do this. You can actually see the locations of them. They had many of them in southern Maryland. They had them all over the country, actually, all throughout the South. And they also did this on their own individual plantations. But on the breeding farm is where they wouldn't just have one brother who was forced to impregnate black women or black girls as soon as they had their first period, but they would have a stable like a horse. And they may have 10 stables, and there'd be a brother in each stable. And all he did for his whole life, he's a big, strong brother. They would take black women down there, put her, as soon as she was 12 years old, the guy might pay. He said they got a good breeding farm in Maryland. He's going to go from Pennsylvania to Maryland on horseback because he wants to get the sister, one of our daughters, pregnant with good pups, is what they would call them, but strong, virile children to pick his cotton. He would go that far, or whatever part of the country he was in, to drive there to do this, and get the sister would, get impregnate, get raped. And this is what the job of the male did. And he did it so often, particularly if he was on a plantation, and this was his job, that eventually they would bring his daughter to him after she was 12 or 13. He'd rape her and do it. Because it was his job. I mean, he didn't have any options in it, and he didn't have any connection to the females that were there. It was a job. It was a duty. And if he did not perform, if he was unsuccessful, or the Europeans had a process, they would actually check his ejaculation to see if they thought it was thick enough and these types of things. They actually had a process for it. And if they didn't think he was up to snuff, they would actually say, well, this stud has gone bad, and they would cut his testicles off.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, I want to just mention this because there's a very good documentation that shows this. It's called My Slave Sister, Myself. There's a brother and sister team up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and they have a black museum. I think it's called the Black Holocaust Museum, but it's a black museum that they have about slavery artifacts in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And they have a video talking about just these type of things that happened during slavery. And it's called My Slave Sister, Myself. And, of course, we'll talk about some of the products that we have as well that deals with these in depth as well. But my point being is that we talk about the rape in passing. but we do not talk about it as a scientific means of warfare, because the objective of the rape of males was more than just a sexual fantasy or tool for enjoyment for Europeans. As a military tactic, it was designed to effeminize the black male for one major purpose, so that we would not retaliate and strike back against whites for the abuse that they were laying on our people. And so, as a scientific form of warfare, they used to have something called buck breaking. And what buck breaking was is, during slavery, they were always, we remember the Willie Lynch story, they were always looking for psychological tools that would help keep black rebellion under control, so that they wouldn't always be worried about the next black person that was going to come up and rise up and maybe try to harm them and kill them. They knew what they were doing was wrong. So they had a process called buck breaking. When they saw that a brother was very rebellious, he always getting in trouble, they didn't want to just cut his foot off or something of that nature. And they noticed that, particularly when they noticed that it was catching on, and other people who wouldn't act like that on a normal basis were getting a little more rebellious or sassy, if we will, then they said, okay, we're going to make an example out of him. And what they would do, they would get a bunch of brothers, black men, to capture the brother. And once they captured him, they would tie him to a pole, piece of wood, and then they would invite the slave community, which means this plantation and maybe 2 or 3 plantations from all around. They would invite all of them to the center, and they would make a big circle around, and they would watch. And they would beat him brutally until he was no longer, he couldn't even stand. And then after they finished doing that, they would stand him up, and a well-endowed white male would come out, take his pants off, and viciously sodomize and rape the brother in front of the whole entire black community. And the object of that was, and then we'll go through each member of the black family, the psychological warfare tool, what was being done, was that for the woman, it told the black woman, if you do not control your black males, your sons, your nephews, your husband, this is what we are going to do to him. So that as a natural matter of the protectorism that a mother has to protect her young and her people, the black woman internalized that it was her responsibility to prevent this from occurring with black men. And so her object became, not that it was intentional, but to effeminize the male, to make him obedient, easygoing. We say today, women they raise their daughters, and they I forget the saying. I think you know what I'm talking about, but they say sisters they raise. The bottom line is that they teach their daughters to be strong, yes, but when it comes to their sons, they try to do everything for their sons, because we've been trained over the course of hundreds of years to make certain that we do not allow, the black woman does not allow her man to get aggressive because of what is going to happen to him. The impact it had on the black male, of course, was very simple. Hey, if I do this, this was going to happen to me. And for the black child, it sent the message that whites were God. Because anyone that can do something like this to you has to be a God. A human couldn't do this because it's not even human to do. And so the idea of preventing rebellion in that way has been going on since the time of slavery. And now what they have done in the current environment, if we study psychological warfare, we understand that they still commit acts of buck breaking today. They're just done in a different manner. And I'm going to talk about how it's used now, that same analogy of buck breaking, how it's used as it relates to how they do it with television. I want you to pay real attention to what I'm talking about now, because this is very important, because it's the exact same process. It's just virtual. It's not the physical person, but we're all seeing it. Now, as an analogy, we have the black man in the center of the group getting raped because he was rebellious. Let's take our brother Ving Rhames. This is how they do it now. Ving Rhames, they put him in a movie like Rosewood. He's a very strong, rebellious black man who fights back and resists racism, white supremacy. And when we watch that, it is an image of manhood that we all would like to emulate. And so we like Ving Rhames. We like the image that he represented. We like ourselves more. We feel more like men because we see somebody fighting back against tyranny. those ideas and that inspiration leads to your own behavior and your own self-esteem, which drives you to do things you would not normally have the confidence or the inspiration to do. Then, and that would be the strong brother on the plantation. We see him fighting back, and we have pride and respect in him. Then, we say they gathered everybody around so you can watch. Well, they don't physically gather us around, but they have these things called movies. Like we said, millions of our people go. We go to the movies, millions at a time, and we're sitting around watching what's happening. So they give us a movie like Pulp Fiction, where he's taken into a situation. He's this big, strong black man again, same man. So we're seeing Ving Rhames, the consistency of him being this strong, rebellious black man. And out of nowhere, we see a white male in the middle of the movie viciously sodomizing him. And so in the back of our minds, we go, what in the world is going on? Because essentially we have a image of who this man is that would play that role. And we expect that some part of him is a reflection of the role that he plays. And so to see him bent over like this, we know that he has money because he's played a role before. He's in them. So we say, what would make him do this? It's like, if he would do this, what chance do I have? So that they crush the idea of a strong black male, even though it's virtual. It makes us feel like, baby, there's nothing sacred. Why would a black man this strong and this powerful, who's had this kind of gift, why would he do something like that? And all of us internally are crushed, our spirits are crushed. And then they come back with a movie like Holiday Hearts, where he's completely in drag. He's wearing female clothes, he's a female and everything like that. And that is similar to what happens on the buck breaking if the brother is not killed after that process, if he gets turned out and becomes a homosexual and turns to that other lifestyle, which is ultimately what they want to see because they want to show people what the results of fighting back are. Then it tells all of us, don't even try to be a man. That's the message there. The message is that don't even think that there's any strong black manhood out there because I don't care how strong it looks, none of it is real and you can't survive. And if you try to be strong, the results of it, the penalty for strong, aggressive black manhood is going to be some type of effeminization and violation in such a way that your mind can't even imagine. So you better just stay quiet and go along and do as you're told.
Wow. Our guest for today's program, the Irritated Genie, and again, author. The book is War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault. You can check the website out. It's linked in the description to the program if you want to get the website. If you are not at the listening at Blog Talk Radio, waronthehorizon.com. Again, waronthehorizon.com, just like it sounds. I'm thoroughly appreciating the information. I wanted you to elaborate on how sex and especially so-called homosexual activity can be used as a weapon, as an act of aggression. I know in some of your material you talk about the conduct of suspected racist white supremacists known as Christopher Columbus and a lot of his exploits. And you also talk about the epidemic of gay fraternities that you're seeing on historically black colleges and universities. Can you kind of relate that to sex and particularly homosexual activity being used as an act of aggression by racist white supremacists?
Yes, and I'll do it too, the acts of aggression and acts of genocide. First, acts of aggression. One thing that whites have studied is that when males are sexually violated, it is disturbing to their character, and they become disturbed. That's one way or another they're going to become disturbed. And they're going to generally go in two directions. Either they're going to become extremely aggressive and violent or extremely effeminized. Now, even when they're extremely effeminized, if they involve themselves in homosexual behavior, they're still involved in very violent acts. But in terms of being a resistance force, what they have noticed is that for Europeans, since homosexuality is part of their culture, they can be homosexual and still be functional, if you will, because it is who they are. It's the core and the centerpiece of their culture. But for all other groups, when males are sexually violated, it completely destroys the sense of manhood and person and purpose of the men of that group. And it makes it very difficult for them to have enough self-esteem and drive to fight and resist white supremacy. So what they do, a good example, if you're talking about homosexuality being used as aggression. You talked about Christopher Columbus, but I want to bring it a little right in front of our face, because what we need to understand is that what Christopher Columbus did that I could explain is something that for the first time in history we've had an opportunity to get real-time information because of the technology that's available. When they went to Iraq, we remember this last war that they went to Iraq, and they went around the communities and rounded up all the males, uncles, nephews, civilian Iraqi males in a Muslim country. And they took them to many different prisons, but the one that we got the pictures from were Abu Ghraib. And the pictures were very graphic of them, one, raping the women, which of course makes men in any culture feel like less than men because they can't protect their own women, which is one of the fundamental bases of manhood. So men, generally speaking, when their women are being attacked, organize for warfare because that's part of their basic tenet of manhood to protect their women. So if they can't protect their women, they begin to become effeminized or angry at their women because they can't protect them. And it begins to create a dysfunctional community. So the sexual rape of women that are targeted makes the men either fight back, or if they can't fight back, it makes them begin to resent the women because they're being raped, and as men they're supposed to protect them, and they have to look these same women in the face that they know that they didn't protect, and they don't feel like men when they do it. So many times they shun those women. Those women become angry with those men for shunning them for things that they had no control over, and you get dysfunction in those communities. And as we saw in the Abu Ghraib prison, their real objective, though, is to rape the men. Because, again, in European culture, sexual abuse of children is part of their culture. It's always been here. That's why in this country you can rape a child and get a slap on the wrist, but, you know, a black man, if you rob a bank and they catch you, you're going to do 10 years, 20 years, standing down, you know. But if you rape a child, you would think that would be capital punishment, but no. Nowhere in this country do you get capital punishment for raping a child because it's part of their very culture. So the systematic rape of men who are not European now has a very different impact. It turns those men, generally speaking, into less than warlike men. They become angry and bitter, and what they generally do as a matter of analysis, in terms of historical analysis, men who are sexually abused either become effeminized, meaning turn to homosexuality, or they go back and become violators of their own children and women. So they get into pornography, they rape, they become pedophiles and molesters because of the sexual trauma that was caused to them. They begin to reenact that and exert that anger and abuse on others. If they don't do that, then they become so hurt and so much damage is done to them spiritually and emotionally, they get on alcohol, drugs, and they become men who are not as functional as they were in the past. So on all those levels, they're systematically destroying the manhood, which is the thing that is necessary, the physical male mass, to protect the community and to avenge the wrongs against the community, to protect the resources of the community, and ultimately to prevent a race of people from being exterminated under the system of racism and white supremacy. So as an act of aggression, it is used to make sure that they've done significant preemptive strike damage to the males of a society that even if they leave, will leave that society upside down and leave it with problems that will foster in that community on its own for at least centuries. When you get 10,000 men that are raped in Abu Ghraib prison, and prisons all throughout Iraq, in this country, there's just one study that was done. They did a study of 365 pedophiles. And those 365 pedophiles had sexually abused like 150,000 children, something crazy. And it boiled down to like 300-something. I forget how many they did, but the average one was over 300. It was like 385 children. The average each pedophile had raped. Pedophilia is a kind of sickness in the psychopathology that an individual is driven to do that and that alone. So everything they do in their life is to find a way that they can somehow violate a child, whether it's touch them, whether it's show themselves to the child, or whether it's actually rape them and sexually abuse them in some way. At any rate, that's what those individuals are driven to do. So when they rape 10,000 men, if 1% of those men, 100 of those men become pedophiles, you now have a systemic problem in your society of pedophilia that is going to go until you get to the point where you have a process of going into families and literally figuring out how you're going to weed this out. The point being is that it's intentionally done. I want people to understand. It is intentionally calculated that it destroys communities that are not European communities. Now, to take it a step further, if we want to understand the system of racism and white supremacy if we look at it in that paradigm that we said when we said it's to conquer, exploit, and then annihilate a group, the annihilation process is where I would say that we are today as a race of people, meaning slavery from the beginning of slavery through the colonization of Africa was an incredibly intense period of brutal exploitation of African people. At this point in time in history, though, they have technology, they have machines, they have planes, they have things that can replace any physical labor they need from us, and they can replace anything that we would offer them. The only thing in the mind of the European that we offer them now is a potential for resistance to their power on this planet. The only thing we offer them is resistance to them having the absolute dominion of the resources of the richest continent on planet Earth, which is Africa, which is our homeland. So the objective now is to exterminate us. They've had their fun with the exploitation process. They had their more fun with the conquering process. Now they don't like this thing where every 20 or 30 years we start rising up and trying to organize and get ourselves back together. They don't like the threat of losing white dominion on planet Earth. And they got enough people around the planet, the Asians, the Hispanics, the Arabs, Islam, vying for power on this planet that they don't really feel like having us in the mix in that way. And so now what they want to do is exterminate our people. And they've been working since the early 1900s. They call it eugenics. The word eugenics means, basically, in a simplistic manner, it is the science of genocide. How do you kill large masses of people in effective ways where people don't resist that hard? So it's one thing if you drop a bomb in a community, but it has a negative impact because the world looks at that, looks down on you, and then begins to prepare itself to fight against you, become an enemy to the world. But if you secretly poison a river and everybody dies from the poison, nobody can point the finger directly at you. That's called eugenics. If you can convince people, instead of going to a community and killing everybody, if you can convince them not to have any babies, and none of them have a child, and all of them end up dying, and the community dies because none of them have a baby, then you have essentially committed genocide without anyone being upset because no one can actually trace back to the fact that it was your input that led to the final result of those people no longer having children. I'm saying this because the greatest eugenics breakthrough that they had found, it was in the 1970s, and there's something you can watch. It's called Myapa 21. It's a very, very good video. It's done by Europeans, but it's extremely informative, and it's very good as it relates to what we're talking today because basically it breaks it quite down very simply. Margaret Sanger was one of the early individuals in the eugenics movement. She's responsible for what we know as Planned Parenthood. And in the early 1900s, they were talking about this eugenics. She was saying we need to do is put birth control facilities in the black community because they're having children at a larger rate and their population is increasing at a larger rate than ours. We need to understand the science of getting black people not to reproduce all around the world so that we can wipe them out in a way that nobody is angry with, and it's more peaceful and it's more easy, and we're not killing them, we're just making sure that they're not born. And so she began to get money from all different areas of the white community to put free birth control clinics under the guise of free health care in black communities all around the country. And to this very day, 78% of these birth control clinics are in black communities. And one of the largest pushes that they have in Africa is Planned Parenthood, which is nothing but the genocide of our people. And by the but it was not very effective because black people didn't believe in abortion. It was not effective until the 1970s when they legalized abortion in this country. And when they legalized abortion, it went from black women being the least likely to have an abortion to the most likely. Because the race of people is inherent in our culture is that we want to do the right thing. When it's not the right thing, we tend to not want to do it. Well, this is how we were before hip-hop anyway. But now that it is seen like it's the right thing and the law was made that we could do it, black women are far more likely than any other women in this country to have an abortion. That was the greatest eugenics breakthrough until Henry Kissinger made the suggestion that what they need to do is encourage homosexuality among black people. And when he made that suggestion in the 1970s, from that time on, it's been a major push. The rationale being, if it's, and we'll compare it to eugenics, yes, like something like 54 million children not born a year for black people, just some ridiculous number. I'm sorry, since over the last 20 years or so, 54 million children not born because of abortion. Wow. But there's a but in that. A black woman who chooses not to have a child and has an abortion, even if she doesn't know that it's somebody else that has structured this thing to create an environment that makes her think she doesn't want to have a child, at any rate, she can make a decision to have a child tomorrow, though. So even if she has 3 abortions, she can still have 3 or 4 children. The potential exists. So it was good in eugenics, but it didn't complete the task. Now, when you supplement that with homosexuality, now you have a masterful move, because if you have a choice between getting a woman to be prone to have an abortion or getting a woman to be a lesbian, you would always pick her to be a lesbian. Because if your objective is that she's not going to have a child, if she has to have an abortion, that means she got pregnant. If she got pregnant, that means she was with a man. If she was with a man, that means the potential is that she might change her mind. But if she's with a woman, you don't have to worry about that. A male with a male, you don't have to worry about that. And even here's the brilliant thing with that plan. If you get these people who are resistant to this misbehavior to accept it, then even if they do go out and get children, you can guarantee yourself that those children will not resist the system of racism and white supremacy, because they are culturally destroyed, growing up in an environment that is psychopathic, unhealthy, and not in any way, shape, or form that which will be necessary to raise the kind of people to fight the kind of battle that we are in. So the greatest eugenics move that the Europeans have made, the greatest genocidal move that they have made around this planet, has been in the last 20 years, has been to try and do everything in their power to force homosexuality on black people. I don't know if people out there have been listening, but the Obama administration, actually Barack Obama himself, is literally right now, as we speak, they're fighting against Uganda, who is saying we are not going to accept homosexuality, and Obama saying you have to accept homosexuality. They're fighting against Malawi. Malawi is saying we're not going to accept homosexuality. They say, yes, you are. They're fighting in Zimbabwe and been fighting for decades or so in Zimbabwe against the homosexuality. They're fighting all throughout the African continent. They are trying to force black people. In fact, they're telling the countries, we will starve you to death. We will put sanctions in on you. We will, in fact, they had legislation that didn't pass the first time it went around, but all 66 of the European nations signed the legislation saying it is going to be illegal. It's an international law. Somehow now whites can tell black people what to do in their own countries. International law that you cannot have a law against homosexuality. Meaning they can put a NATO force together. If you say we're not going to allow homosexuality in our country and if we catch you doing it, we're going to put you in jail, then they're setting it up to get the vote so that they can give themselves the power and the authority and the dominion to go into your country and literally destroy your country and take it over because you won't allow homosexuality. And so that allows us to see what's happening here, because here it's far more intense than that. Here we have Medea, Tyler Perry. Mm-hmm. Here we have Eddie Murphy and what's the movie? Norbit, Big Mama's House, Martin Lawrence. Mm-hmm. Here we have every sitcom that you see with black people with some homosexuality in it. Every, comedian's talking about what you would do for $1,000. You have movies like The Color Purple, which is a lesbian classic, where black women in large mass find it to be their favorite movie, and the whole purpose of the movie, or the whole theme of the movie is that black men are terrible and mistreat you, you need to get your sexuality from a female.
Now, wait a minute. Alice Walker, black female, she wrote Color Purple. You know, white people didn't write Color Purple. You can't just say that that's, you know, something to praise and worship so-called lesbian behavior.
Oh, that's a brilliant question you put on the table, and I have to answer that. Now, here's what we will find very interesting. First of all, Alice Walker is a lesbian. Alice Walker was married outside of the race, and most people don't know that, but she was married to a white so-called Jew. We call them small hats. And the reason that that's important to our discussion is that at least tells us she has no loyalty to black people when you marry outside the race. We understand that. In fact, Brother Nellie Fuller said that the most damaging thing that whites can do to black people is to lay in the bed and have sexual contact with black people, because it only serves to confuse us. So not only is that, but most people think that the book and the movie has something to do with each other. And the truth of it is, if you read the book and look at the movie, they almost are completely two whole entirely different things. And I'm not saying that she doesn't have lesbianism in the book, because she does. What I'm saying, though, she did not make the movie. The movie was made by a team of Europeans. I'll give you some of the names. One was Steven Spielberg. Now, let me ask you a question, brother. Okay. What other movies that you remember Steven Spielberg made?
Amistad.
Okay.
Schindler's List.
Okay. Go back a little bit before Color Purple, the ones he made before Color Purple.
Before Color Purple, wow. I'm not allowed to cheat, am I? I can't look on the computer.
Oh, yeah, look on the computer. Yeah, that'll be great. That'll be even better. Yeah, look on the computer.
I'll do that then. That way we can be precise.
Okay. And I can say a couple of them, because you remember he made Jaws?
Oh, that's right. You
remember he made E.T.?
Yeah. Remember that one?
I think it was Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Wow. Okay. I remember that one.
The reason I bring up those movies is because each of those movies, his gift is in creating monsters. He's a monster maker. Jaws, the most scariest monster in the world. I mean, he creates these intimidating forces that frighten the heck out of you. This monster. Now, there's a female named Kathleen Kennedy. She was also a producer of The Color Purple. She did the movie Schindler's List. Now, what was Schindler's List? About drawing emotion, strong emotion out of a movie to make you feel bad for someone. What I'm saying is that they put together a team of white engineers who created a movie that didn't have very much to do with the book at all. It just had the same name as the book. So you get the impression, since everybody is black, and since the individual who wrote the book is black, that the movie you're getting is from a black point of view, but that's not what's happening. What's actually happening is you got a guy that makes monsters, and so he makes a guy named Mister, and he makes an incredible monster of a black man that brutalizes a little black girl. Am I saying that black men have never mistreated our women? No. But it is a result of European abuse, and the movie didn't show that. What the movie showed is that you had independently wealthy black men in the 1920s riding around on horseback, raping little black girls on their way to school. Now, if I was to tell you that in 1920 a little black girl was on the way to school and the man was riding on horseback and jumped off the horse and raped him, who would you say did that, brother?
Most likely a white person.
Most likely a white male, because he would be the one that's independently wealthy. He would be the one that has the time when the little girl's going to school to rape her. And quite frankly, why would a man that has a little girl living in his house wait to rape her along the side of the road when he could do it in his own home? My point is, we go even further. If we remember the movie The Color Purple, and I'm just talking about the science of creating confusion among black people to push our people in the wrong direction so that they get the kind of results that they want. If we remember the beginning of the movie Color Purple, somebody came and took the little girl's baby and sold her baby. Now, as black people in America, brother, if I told you that a male came to a black girl who was having a baby, took her baby before she got a chance to even know the baby and sold it off, who would you say that would be, brother?
I used to work at social services. I would say for sure, most likely a white woman, but a white man or a white woman.
Yes, sir. And they're doing the same thing today. selling our babies to homosexuals and other whites that come in to buy them, as we saw in Haiti and various places around the world and around the country. But the point being is that they created this juvie, The Color Purple. It was the most effective in my estimation. The only movie I think can compare in its impact to this movie would be Birth of a Nation, which got more black people lynched. It got more black people lynched than any other film in history. But this film, The Color Purple, is responsible for changing the black woman's mind in thinking that her natural mate is the black man, her natural enemy is the white male, and that she is supposed to be fighting the war with the black man against the white race. It changed her mind to thinking that a strong black woman, Sophia in the movie, Oprah Winfrey, is one who sees the black man as the enemy and fights against the black man and looks to the black woman for female sexuality and love. And so what we see is post-1985 Color Purple movie. We have seen the type of explosion in lesbianism around the world with black women, particularly starting in America and spreading throughout the world, where it is now part of black female culture to involve themselves in lesbianism. I would say probably easily 50% of the women 40 and under, if they're not married now and haven't been married for a substantial time, have either been involved in it heavily or at least tried it once. And I'm going to say why I say that. Because it's very difficult to get away with it. Their favorite movie is The Color Purple in general. That's black. This is how effective you know it is. That movie was done in 1985. This is over 20 years past, and they're still recycling it in plays that are going around the country, and people are running to see it. Why? We talked about the greatest eugenics breakthrough has been to get black people to turn to homosexuality, because in that lifestyle, while we're arguing back and forth about whether it's right or wrong, what is happening is that you have entire generations of families that are not being developed. We're not just talking about one or two. We're talking about a woman who will be a mother and a man who will be a father, who will be together, who will be building something, have 6 or 7 children, and each of those children will be a contributor to our people, and a family unit trying to make our people survive the system of racism and white supremacy. As opposed to that, we have a female who's involved in sexuality with another female, which is preying on little girls or young teenage girls, getting them involved in that misbehavior, getting them into drugs and so forth and what have you. You have males who are involving themselves in sexual relations with other males, going to prison, either raping males or getting raped, being demoralized by that type of misbehavior, committing crimes, doing drugs, not producing families, not protecting children, not educating, protecting our people. The process of nation building, the process of peoplehood is being completely non-administered as our people are going around victims of abuse, going around violating one another, bumping into each other, just destroying any potential we have for a future. And when we're doing that, the European has plenty of time to go around and mess with Hugo Chavez and the red man and red woman, with the Arabs, with everybody else in the world, because he doesn't even really have to do much but continue to feed the self-destructive behavior that he was the catalyst for creating, but which now we are adopting as a behavior, which is only helping to exterminate us faster.
Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade, the Irritated Genie, author of War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault. Please check the website, waronthehorizon.com. One more time, waronthehorizon.com. Excellent information. Glad folks tuned in live, or if you listen to the archives, thank you either way. I wanted to ask you, do you think this effiminization, do you think the same sort of thing that happens when particularly black males engage in so-called homosexual activity, do you think the same sort of side effects result when a non-white person, particularly black males, engage in sexual intercourse with a white person, even if it is a white female. Do you think the same sort of side effects are prevalent?
I'll say the same end result occurs. I'm not going to say it's the exact same side effects, because a black person who indulges with a European is definitely suffering from a lack of self-esteem, a lack of understanding of what they're involved in. But if they don't understand the construct that they're in, they could, other than not understanding the water they're in, they could be a generally healthy person, except that they're involved in completely treasonous behavior, meaning a brother could be with a white female or a sister could be with a white male, realize what they're doing is wrong, leave that, come right back to the race, and not have the same type of tie to something pulling them in the wrong direction. It's almost like a drug. There's something about what happens when a person intentionally involves themselves in homosexual behavior that disturbs, for the lack of a better term, and I try to stay scientific, but this is one time where I have to break the rule of things that I can prove, because I can't conceptualize it in any other way. I have to say it has a effect on the spirit, meaning the soul, the innermost part of a person, where their self-respect lies. It does a permanent damage, but it doesn't mean a person cannot bounce back. I'm not saying that, but it's like I would compare it to the difference between doing marijuana and crack. If you continue to do marijuana forever in your life, sure, it's going to have the same impact as crack. You're not going to be effective, and you're going to be, eventually you're a drug addict. I mean, it's going to eventually catch up with you until you can do the same thing crack can do. But it's not crack, because a person can say, you know what, I'm finished with marijuana. I'm not going to do this anymore. And whatever brain cells are damaged, they're damaged. But you're done with it if you make a decision. To make the decision to stop doing crack is much, much more difficult, and it's a deeper type of drug in terms of its impact. So the impacts are similar. When a black person gets with somebody white, they abandon it. Well, I'm going to make it even more simple than that. There's a few tactics that Europeans have used for the final extermination of different races around the world. Integration is always the last stage, meaning no matter what process they use, at the end of that process, no matter how they exterminate a group, whether it's through scientific warfare, poisoning their rivers, whatever, the last stage of it is that Europeans come in, take the last survivor members of them, merge them into the European race by intermarriage, and wipe them out. If you look at it, there's a movie called Rabbit-Proof Fence, which actually shows where they actually scientifically said this is our objective, to wipe out the black blood by integrating the last ones here into the society. About a third generation, you won't even notice that there's any black whatsoever. In Brazil, I believe it was Harry Truman, if I'm not mistaken, that went to Brazil, and he was talking to the president of Brazil, and the president of Brazil said, listen, you're dealing with your Negro problem the wrong way. He said, you try to deal with your Negro problem by segregating them. The problem is they develop their culture, they get closer, they grow stronger. He said in Brazil, the way we exterminate our groups, he said we have, and it was an example that Asa Hilliard in his book, SBA, The Reawakening of the Black Mind, the African Mind, he said that the guy said there was a group, there was an area, a region that was 95% black. By conditioning those people to believe that intermarrying with whites and that they wanted to interbreed with whites and everybody wanted to be light-skinned, kind of similar to a more severe version of what we believe here, that lighter is better and dark is bad. So everybody wants to date outside, their complexion, wants to go as light as they can. It was only something like 60, 70 years. They took something that was like 95% black, and I don't remember the exact number. It was like maybe 20% black or 15% black. They literally wiped out the group by just getting them to intermarry to the point where you didn't even see a person that looked clearly black anymore. So the integration, even if we look at the Native American, let's look at something more direct to where we're at. Okay, we're here 500 years. In 500 years, if we're talking about a continent, it's not a long time. 500 years ago, if we'd have come to this place, we'd have seen all red people. They were the entire inhabitants. Now, a little over 500 years ago. Now, even if you see somebody that says they're Native American, I guarantee you most times you're going to think that they're white before you think they're Native American until they tell you who they are. Why? Not because they don't have a link to their ancestors, but there's been so much rape and so much dilution of their blood. They're so diluted through rape and interbreeding after the end of it, after they had them in the numbers where they can control them, that you can't even physically identify them many times. And that's right here in America. When was the last time you saw a full-blooded red man, brother?
Wow. Maybe never.
Yeah. Sometimes I sit here and I think, man, it's almost surreal. But we're in a place that 500 years ago, we're not talking about a nation. We're not talking about a city. This entire, actually the whole hemisphere, from Canada down to the tip of South America, it was all red people. Now I challenge you to go get somebody that is a completely red person with untainted blood, or even that looks close to what we look like when we look at the pictures from the 1920s or from the late 1800s. Get somebody who looks like that now, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to have a very difficult time doing it. They exterminate groups, and the last stage of it is that integration. And that is why I'm glad you brought that up, because if we look at, we have to learn and understand what the media does. In fact, right now, this Saturday, I'm doing the third part of a 3-part series on entertainment, what it is and how it works, so we understand the impact that it has. Through the television, Europeans and the white race supremacists tell us what they want us to do. So if you see them putting brothers on TV with dresses on, they want us to be effeminized because they're not serious. They see us acting like buffoons. They don't want us to be serious. They're killing us. And people who are getting killed, if they're serious, are going to do something to defend themselves. If you're not serious, then you probably don't worry about getting killed because you're not serious anyway. And so this is the condition that they want us in. So one of the things is they tell people what they want you to do through that television. The two main things that black people get consistently, turn on your television tonight. I know it's 10 o'clock on the Eastern Standard Time and about 7 o'clock on Western time. And I'm telling you right now, you turn on your TV tonight and you see some black folks on TV, there's going to be homosexuality and integration. Both of them mean extermination. You're going to see some black male who should be with a black woman with anybody other than a black woman. If there's another male or a white female, you're going to see a black woman. They're now getting our sisters into this madness. With a white male talking about that there are not any good black men out here, that she thinks she should go to a white male, or with another woman. You're going to see brothers in skirts and dresses. They just had Evander Holyfield a few months ago do a commercial with a dress on. They're constantly getting black males, constantly. And I'm telling anybody, if you listen to this conversation, you can watch any of the television shows you like. If you like the television show Lincoln Heights, which is a black kind of drama series, all of the women on the show, even the mother who's married, she didn't have the love affair with the white male, but he had to leave the country because he was so in love with her. The daughters are involved in lesbianism.
Wow.
And even in high school, they have little girls portraying high school students kissing each other in the mouth on the show. All of the women are dating white. The brother, who's the father in the show, has a daughter who is in high school trying to get married to a European white male in high school.
What show is this again?
It's called Lincoln Heights. And it's like one of, yes, sir. And it's one of the main, and it's on like the Family Channel, ABC Family or something. So they want the whole family to get into self-suicide.
What in the world? To be expected in the system of white supremacy. We have a great respect for definitions here. One of our listeners, she wanted you to explain what you mean when you say integration. And I guess I would appreciate it if you could explain what you mean when you use the term white sex.
Okay, yes, I'll do both. I'll start with white sex because that integration is a loaded question. And by the way, I just want to mention this if I don't forget. I have a lecture. You can order these all online. All of the different topics that we're talking about, there's a lecture with a PowerPoint presentation included designed for the purpose of explaining all of these things in depth. In fact, if you go to YouTube, put in Irritated Genie, IRRITATED, Genie, GENIE, and you should come up on the side with a bunch of different ones. One is on integration, some on Christianity, some on effiminization, some on feminism, all of these things that impact child molestation, all of these things that are impacting our life, genocide even. White sex is any act of perversion that was created in Europe and comes out of European culture, including homosexuality, pedophilia, bestiality, rape, orgies, sadomasochism, and the like. The reason we call it white sex is because initially when we said sex as black people, we think that we're all talking about the same thing. However, from the black paradigm, which originally was a consenting man and a consenting woman having a sexual interaction, that's sex. If you rape someone, that's not sex, that's a violation. In Europe, it's different. Sex and aggression go together. So actually, white sex is any act of sex and or aggression that derives out of Europe, including homosexuality, rape, bestiality. The reason we say that is because the paradigm is completely different for Europeans. Sexuality for Europeans means to violate something. It's aggression. The two are the same thing. So, and now we can understand why the premier sexual contact in European culture, which is why you see the Catholic priest. You can't be with a woman to reach his highest and noblest aspirations, the highest spiritual religious post in the European world. You can't be with a woman, but they violate the souls of little boys every night. It's part of their culture. Why? Because it is the greatest form of a violation. Not only are you violating another male to be with a male, but then you're also violating a child. So when you put those together, that's the greatest human violation that you can do. And that has the greatest sense of joy and excitement for the European. That is the way the mentality works. But that's why they have things called sadomasochism, and you see them whipping each other in these chains and stuff, but it's called sexuality. But sometimes they don't even have sex. Sometimes they just beat each other and bleed each other, and they don't even have sexual intercourse, but it is sex to them. That's why when the same feeling they get out of running and catching a black woman and raping her, 5 of them gang raping a black woman, is the same feeling they get when they pull a black man over on his way to his family at night, knowing that he hasn't done anything, and pull out a gun and say they thought he had something and blow his brains out. Or they would lynch us and put us on a tree and burn us and then cut the testicles and cut the penis off and cut the body parts and sell them. The same sense they get from that, it is sex for them. Sex, aggression, they're the same thing. So we call it white sex as opposed to sex so that we understand this is the European paradigm. This is how white folks perceive sex. And these, to us, are all called perversions. So we classify them all together because we try, as black people, we try to understand it because it's something foreign to us. Well, homosexuality is this, and bestiality is this, and this is this, and we try to put it in a compartment, but it really doesn't work that way because once you don't know that a man, that the enjoyment he's supposed to get out of a sexual experience is that a woman wants to share that with him, and that they both agree to do it, and that's it. Once you get out of that African paradigm, you are in white sex now. You're in a whole other place, and we should not have the same term for the two things because they're different. So that's white sex. As it relates to integration, what I'm talking about. This is one thing that Nellie Fuller talks about, and it was very, very important. In fact, I'm going to say that's why I say he was part of the foundation of my understanding and why I'm able to do the work in the way I am and why I do the work in the way I am. If you do not consider the meaning of words and even create your own words, it will not lead to the right ideas. No matter what you're doing, if you do not consider the words carefully, and if necessary, if you don't create your own words like white sex, then you will not make the best decisions. You will not be able to operate in the best manner. You will not come to the best conclusions. In this case, when we're talking about integration, I just want everybody, and this is very simple, let us think in a very simplistic manner to put together what we're talking about when we say integration. If black people are in Africa and we're all by ourselves and there are no Europeans there, that would not be integration because integration means to bring things together. I want to ask you, brother, what was the circumstance, the primary circumstance, that brought black people and whites together to be in the condition that we're in today?
White supremacy.
Yeah, but it's a specific event or a series of events. If we were in Africa, they were in Europe. How did we get integrated?
Slave trade specifically.
That's right, slavery. So, if that's the case, then the synonym for integration is slavery. The process of enslaving Africans, that's how we got integrated. If you want to take it on another level, okay, that's what happened to those of us who got brought here to America. Okay, what about the African continent? What was the primary, because there were still brothers and sisters still in Africa after the slave trade had ended. But now we see a bunch of Europeans over there, European interests. What was the process called that integrated black people with whites on the African continent?
I think the term white people would use would be colonization.
Yes, sir. That's the term they use, called colonization. So when we as black people say that we believe in integration, it would not be intelligent for us not to say, okay, well, what are the two major forms of integration that have occurred over the last 500 years with black people and whites coming together? One would be what we call the Atlantic slave trade, where we integrated. We were under their rule. We were together. And the other is called colonialism. They came in with their guns and bombs and tanks and destroyed us. Now, I believe that is well, let me ask you, I want an opinion. Is that a fair assessment?
Fair. That, man, interesting one. I would say that is an accurate assessment. That I think that would be accurate to say that slavery, so-called slavery, and so-called colonization, those would be two of the greatest occurrences of so-called integration in the last 500 years. Yes, I would say that's accurate.
Okay, well, if that is accurate, then when we say, even the question, well, I'm glad that Sister asked a very good question, because we don't really consider these things. But when you ask the question, what are we talking about, then I'm going to say that's what we're talking about. I'm just going to keep it simple. We talk about slavery and colonialism. No, I don't want those. Because when we didn't have slavery and colonialism, we were building pyramids. We were melting iron and building great civilizations of Ouagadougou and Mali and Songhai. You read the destruction of black civilization, and you realize, matter of fact, he makes it very clear in the book, our brother Chancellor Williams. After going through thousands of years of history, he makes it very clear. In fact, at one point, I really love this book. It's my favorite book, actually. Well, it's my second favorite book. Probably the most important book ever written, in my estimation, but it's my second favorite. He says that, in essence, I'm not saying it verbatim, but it's the chapter in Destruction of Black Civilization called Africans at the Crossroads, and he says, it is necessary for the proper re-education, either the proper re-education of African people will not begin. It will not begin until we come to the solid conclusion that the white race is our bitter enemy. I'm going to say it again. He said that the process for the necessary re-education of black people for our survival, it will not begin until we rationalize and accept the single most important fact in the lives of our people, and that is that the white race is our bitter enemy, meaning their object is to destroy us. Once we accept that fact, which is why we call it racism, white supremacy, and we give it a name and a title, and we accept their classification of themselves as white, and we use it because we're trying to navigate to prevent the destruction of our people. Once we recognize the fact that, okay, we have an enemy and this is who it is, that is the only time that we can begin to say, well, what should we be teaching our people? So that if someone asks the question, how do you feel about integration? Well, if I know that the whites are my enemy, before I go off and get confused, it's hard to get me confused because I already know that being around them, being around my enemy, is not healthy for me because what it has done. So then I say, well, integration. Well, what has that done? Well, how did I get integrated with the whites to begin with? They enslaved me. Because I already know that when it's all said and done, whatever answer I give you, the end result is that the whites are my enemy. Now, contrarily, if I am fooled and tricked into the madness of confusion that the masses of our people are in today, into believing that the very enemy that's here to destroy our people is my friend, then it doesn't matter what you ask me. If you ask me about integration, since the end of my conversation in my mind is that whites are my friends or they're gods or I love whites, I'm going to navigate an answer that gets me there. So I'm going to say, well, you know, there's been a lot of things that worked. I think there's still a long way to go, but there's some improvements that can be made, but things are not like they used to be, you know. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You didn't really answer the question. But because you have to navigate to loving white folks, you're going to say what you've been told to say or make some sense out of it. And that's what I really think really is the centerpiece in all of our conversations. When are we going to understand and accept the fact that we are in what I classify as a race war? In fact, people ask me what my religion is. I tell them my religion is race war. And they say, no, I mean your religion, what are your beliefs? I said, that's my belief, that God put me here, the Creator put me here to fight and win a race war against the white race. That's my job. I have to wake my people up. I have to prepare them for a real battle, because this is not no spiritual battle. This is a very physical battle where they're killing us every day, and we're going to have to be willing to defend ourselves appropriately or we're going to be destroyed. And my God wants my religion to be to win this war. That's the only thing I believe in. That's why I get up in the morning. That's why I go to sleep at night, so I can get up in the morning and fight a race war. I'm not looking for no good whites. I don't care if you find a good one. I hope you do something about that then so you can brag about it, you know, deal with them then so you can tell people later, hey, there was a good white guy, I remember. And before he did anything bad, I took care of it, you know, but I'm not looking for any of that. I'm looking for a final conclusion to over 6,000 years of unnecessary, unprovoked warfare against my race on behalf of the white race. I want a final conclusion where I'm still here, you, my brother, are still here, our children are still here, and our women are still here. And where we can figure out what the new, you know, it took thousands of years to come up, I mean, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years to come up with building pyramids, which was some of the greatest proof and testaments to our willingness to understand creation and build on a massive level to show that we appreciate this planet and the world that we live in around us. That was a great challenge to be able to get to an accomplishment like that. My personal perspective is that our next great challenge is to deal with the great evil that has plagued the planet Earth and is threatening to destroy everything that exists on this planet, that is the white race. And after we have done adequately with our second great task, then maybe God has some other tasks for us. I really don't care because I'm going to leave the world to y'all after that's over. I'm just here to do my part. I'm the center man. Look, throw me the ball in the middle. Don't try to ask me to dribble the ball up the court. I'm going to turn around and try to dunk it, and I want to, you know, do my part.
Again, the Irritated Genie, author of War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault. Please support the efforts. WarOnTheHorizon.com. Website again, WarOnTheHorizon.com. I want to make sure I give folks an opportunity to ask questions because a lot of people called in. The number for the studio line, 347-215-6071. Before I go to the phone lines, number one, I wanted you to promote the website and material that you have, very constructive information on racism, white supremacy, if you could promote that for the folks listening in. And I wanted to ask you, guest on the previous program, Aisha Sekhmet, black female, she does a lot of music about racism, white supremacy. She said that black males treat black females the way that white men treat black males. That was her theory on a lot of the conflict that we have between black males and black females. I just wanted to get your thoughts on her statement, and again, if you would promote where people can get your material.
I would say, one to her statement, I wouldn't say I disagree with it. I would say we definitely mistreat our women. There's no question whatsoever. I would say, though, I would want to be a little bit more balanced for that. I'm not saying that she's not being balanced. I'm just saying if I were to make the statement, I wouldn't want to say it that way because I would say black males treat black females and black females treat black males the way that whites have taught us to treat one another. I say it that way because, I find that we're in a very crisis situation with black women. I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to speak to this, and I'm going to answer the other question, but I think it's very important for me to say this. Historically, I've never seen a time like this. And I've done some research. It's not like I'm a newbie on this thing. I really have looked. I don't know everything, definitely. And I'm willing to take criticism, but I will say this. Historically, the black woman has been a very consistent race warrior. She has always been consistently loyal to her race. In general, that has been the general consensus of the black woman historically. And more than that, when black male strength and decency was absent, she has always taken it upon herself to take it as her responsibility to be better and to produce better generations. For the first time in the history that I've seen, what I see with black women is that they have intellectually abandoned the race and have decided to point the finger at black males. Now, I will say this. We lost the wars that got us into this condition, and we have been anything other than decent men in the last 20 or 30 years. We deserve every bit of criticism we get. But as a matter of success in warfare, we're not going to win without our women's contribution, because we've seen when we won in the history of this world in war against whites, we won with the black woman's assistance. And more than ever, when I talk to black men, and even in my own life, in my observation, black women are aggressively fighting against strong black manhood, whether it's raising soft, effeminized, homosexual little boys, not letting them have their fathers in their lives, things of this nature. So the black man's irresponsibility as a man is well documented. It's on record. I'll take full responsibility for the fact we're anything but men at this point in time in history, and we deserve criticism. But I want to say this is the first time in the history of the world I've seen the black woman in such a bad condition where she deserves equal and outright criticism as well, because black women are beginning to contribute to the downfall of our race as much, equally, or more than the men. And if you want to see that, again, turn on the television and count the number of black males who are out here with whites in relationships, and then start counting the number of sisters that get on the TV and are dating white males in these shows, in which you'll see the racial treason is becoming equal. If you go outside and see a homosexual black male, I want you to go outside and count the homosexual lesbian sisters. And what you'll start noticing is that even though it's our responsibility to protect our women and children, we haven't done it, we're starting to see the black woman turn the corner in terms of race responsibility. And I don't want black women to do that, so I'm very cautious whenever I say anything. I want it to be a balanced statement. As it relates to what we have available for sale for our people, we have the website, and people will be happy to know tomorrow, when you go on the website tonight, enjoy it, because we're going to have a brand new look to the website. It's going to be more simple to navigate. The store is going to be right there on the site. It's going to be something very exciting, and actually we're going to unveil it and launch it tomorrow. So it's going to be something very new and exciting for WarOnTheHorizon.com. You can go there if you're a brother or sister who has suffered sexual abuse and you're looking for some answers and some healing. We have some essays there under our essay section tab that talks about sexual abuse, the history of it. It also talks about what kind of emotional problems a person can deal with. It also gives solutions. What are some of the things you can do if you're suffering from sexual abuse? And that's perfectly free. And it's extensive information that you can spend time going through and working through. We also have DVDs dedicated to almost every topic you can think of that is relevant to the survival of black people on this planet. Not every single one, but a significant number of them. Also have Racism and White Supremacy courses, a 5-part course, different things available at our War on the Horizon store. You can go online, WarOnTheHorizon.com, go to the store. The products are very reasonably priced. And I'm not bragging, but I do have a lot of confidence, and I believe in the work that we do. I would say that you will be very happy with the product that you get, no matter which topic. If it's integration, if it's race giants, about the heroes and sheroes who fought on behalf of our people, if it's genocide, the destruction of the black race, what they're doing to our people and how they're doing it, you'll be happy with the product that you get because we try to always offer solutions at the end, not just telling what the problem is, but also giving practical steps and solutions that we can do. And lastly, I would like to, say we have the book, War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault, and it was written intentionally, not to be over anyone's head. We have 12-year-olds who read this book and read it just as fast. Actually, many of the 12-year and 13 and 14-year-olds read it faster than their parents. And parents are reading the book with their children. They have their own children, and the children go right through the book to the end. It's good information that helps us understand the situation we're in so we can make better decisions in our lives. And all that's available on the site War on the Horizon.
Outstanding. I want to hit the phone lines to see if any of the folks who've been listening in, if they have some questions you would like to ask the Irritated Genie. Non-Mightywick, I see you called in. If you have a question you'd like to ask, go right ahead.
Thank you, host. If you don't mind coming back to me in about 5-10 minutes, I'll be ready then. Thank you.
Not a problem. Let's see, 404. You have a hand up, 404. If you have a question, your mic is open.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Hi. First, I just wanted to say, wow. That was a lot of really amazing, constructive information. And my question is, just listening to you speak, Irritated Genie, it sounds like you're of the opinion that there's something very peculiar about the white, quote-unquote, race. You called them subhuman. And I just wanted to ask if you think that it's important in fighting white supremacy to, believe that we are different. I don't know if you want to call it race, because I see it as white and non-white, but, if you could just speak on that.
I think that's, first of all, let me thank you for the question, sister. I think that's a loaded question. It's a beautiful question. I'm going to say not only do I think it's important, going back to what Chancellor Williams said, I do believe what he's saying. In order for us to survive on this planet, it is imperative that we completely, mentally, view ourselves as different and distinct than this European. The reason is because it is not only their physical behavior that is disgusting and vile to black people, but their behavior is so ugly. So that if we see ourselves as different than them, it helps us also look at them in terms of their behavior and say, well, if I'm different than him and he goes and rapes children, well, I can't also be involved in raping children and say that I'm different than him. Then that makes me like him. So we not only distance ourselves as physical beings, but we also look and say, well, what's my own culture? What is my own behavior? How do I treat my own women? How do I protect my own children? What is my position on these things? And that will help us wage a more appropriate and successful battle against them. In fact, if we don't do that, we can't wage a war against them.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for calling in, Love, Truth, Liberation. I believe this is Mr. Nero. Mr. Nero, if you have a question for the Irritated Genie, your mic is open.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Just listening in for now, but excellent broadcast. Appreciate the information.
Thank you for listening in, sir. We appreciate it. Let's see. Someone is calling in at a 111. We have a line open now. If you would like to, someone would like to call in. If you're listening, there's a line open, 347-215-6071. Person who called in at 111, if you have a question, your mic is open.
Gus, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Thanks for the show. I have maybe two questions. I have more than two, but I'll try to get these two in. Neely Fuller said that we are either monsters or monstrosities. And when you were talking about Steven Spielberg producing monsters in his movie, I noticed that the Jewish faith or religion, they have a term called golem, which is basically an an artificial human being. And that's something that I just thought of. I don't know if I gave you enough to address, but.
Did you say Goyim or did you say Golem?
Golem.
I'm not familiar with.
Or Goyim, it's Golem, Golem. It means artificial human being.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the term Golem.
Okay. The other question I wanted to ask you was about, let's see, when you were talking about like the psychological damage that is inflicted on people that are like black males that are abused in a homosexual way. Do you think that there's any cure for that? Or I know a lot of people say basically there's no cure. Like once you've been damaged in that way, you know what I'm saying, that's it. I know the Bible speaks on saying like homosexuals should be put to death. And when you were talking about the psychological damage and how it affects, you were saying generations, a century type of thing, like they're going to abuse somebody else. I was wondering.
Yes, I can answer that. I think as a matter of fact, I think it's probably one of the most important questions that we're talking about on a practical basis, that this is occurring on an extremely it's an epidemic basis in our community. My answer to that is there a magic cure, like something that you take? No. But one thing that is it's just so good to know your own history. Our ancestral story is a story of Asar and Set and Haru. I'm not going to really go deep into that story, but my point is it was a story of hope and the fact that our ancestors told us we can overcome anything. And I'm saying that to say, in so many instances as black people, Europeans have done the type of things to us that seem impossible to recover from, individually and collectively. But, yes, black people who have been sexually abused, that man can choose not to rape anyone. That man can choose not to be involved in homosexuality. That man can be a functional man who has self-respect and a sense of decency. A sister who's been sexually abused, she can be a black woman who's loyal to her people, who has some dignity and self-respect, who realizes that it was not her fault and doesn't blame herself. Yes, we can recover from that and become functional people. However, I have to state this, because it's so critical to us, as particularly for black men, to understand this, and even black women as mothers, but particularly for black men. We cannot allow sexual abuse to occur to our people, because even though we can overcome it, in every instance it is something that has to be overcome, meaning no one who is sexually abused in the black community, in the black world community, anywhere on this planet, does not have to deal with that thing I call the spiritual impact of sexual abuse. And it does not matter if you're 1 year old or 10 years old or 15 years old when it happens. There is something that happens. I can't exactly quantify it, but I've study it. I mean, I work with people. There's something that happens to our people. And it requires work to overcome it. And it is constant work. It may even be a lifetime of work to constantly deal with the pain that is created with that kind of violation for our people. But to the direct answer of your question, yes, we can overcome it. But it's so important for black men to get organized to prevent sexual abuse, because we got to overcome racism and white supremacy. We don't need our people to be going around with an extra load, our children even, to be dealing with the pain of the sexual abuse. So if you're a brother or sister who's gotten involved in that lifestyle, absolutely you can get out of it. But like crack, it's not something that you can be around, and it's not something you can play with. You have to understand that it is racially treasonous misbehavior. It was not your fault that you got involved in it, but you have to decide to make the decision that it's your responsibility to come out of it and do the work associated with that and get the help that you need if you can, go to the psychiatrist or whatever the case may be, or friends and family, and work through that transition.
Let's see. Non-Mighty Wick, if you got everything together, your mic is open. You can ask your question, sir.
Yeah, thank you both for the very informative exchange of views this evening. Conversation was very constructive. I missed the first maybe 45 minutes of the broadcast. Maybe you did this already, Gus, but can you break down your name for me?
Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Irritated Genie. There's a book by a brother named Jacob Carruthers. He's deceased now. Peace be upon him. And the brother did the book called The Irritated Genie. And The Irritated Genie is about the Haitian Revolution. And when I was saying before that the most important book, I think, my opinion, the most important book for our people is The Destruction of Black Civilization. But I said that's not my favorite book. My favorite book is The Irritated Genie, and that's where I got my namesake. The Irritated Genie was, what the Haitian people told was the spirit of revolution. And they said that the Irritated Genie would rouse the sea and make the ships crash. It would impregnate the people with the spirit of warfare and freedom and independence and hatred towards tyrants so that they could destroy their white enemies and become independent and free. And it was under that guise of the Irritated Genie, the spirit of the fighting, self-righteous, self-respecting black man and woman of Haiti, that they said that they would be free and won their independence. And because I see that we're in a global race war, and that is the spirit that needs to be re-invoked into our people, that is the name that I've adopted, and it's carried on since that time. So that's my favorite book. I suggest for people, if you get a chance to get your hand on it, you'll be very inspired by what our Haitian brothers and sisters were able to accomplish.
Thank you. I think earlier I heard you talking about Lincoln Heights, but I didn't quite hear what you mentioned about that show. Can you repeat it again? Yes, sir.
We were talking about the negative themes, and that what the television is pretty much what media is. It's the most sophisticated form of psychological warfare ever created in the history of the world. And suffice it to say, we're talking about Lincoln Heights. What the television does, the Europeans tell you what they want you to do by presenting that on their television, on their big screen, in the radio, whatever the case may be. So the behavior that they show you is what they want you to do. And when we were talking about Lincoln Heights, I was talking about how almost every female character has a white male love interest, which, of course, ultimately, if you follow the logic, if all black women got out with white males, it would only take a few generations before we wipe out our black gene. So we're looking at genocide. And I said when they're not after white males, the young girls in high school are making out with each other. So lesbianism, well, if we follow the logic, if every one of our little daughters was with another young lady, then they wouldn't be having children, then the genocide would occur as well. So I was saying the two main themes, no matter what you're watching, whether it's commercial, television, anything for black people, the two main themes now are two exceptionally psychopathic and genocidal behaviors for black people. One is dating outside of our race, and two is homosexual white sex misbehavior, pedophilia, homosexuality, so forth, and what have you. And I was saying Lincoln Heights, for people who watch it, is a perfect example of the consistent push to try to tell our people not to be in healthy relationships with one another.
I've seen one episode of Lincoln Heights, and I saw it was, I guess, in relation to the negative impact on non-white people. It was the lead character, or the star character, I guess. He was a non-white male. He was an enforcement official, and he comes across a white high school buddy or something or another, and at one point in time, the white person kills or shoots someone else in the movie or in the show. And then in that same show, it showed the non-white male attempt to give his life to protect the white person that killed somebody earlier in the show. So thank you very much. Continue listening. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother.
Thank you for calling in, sir. Lauren Ashley, did you have any questions, or are you just listening?
Just listening.
I guess we'll go with 850. If you have a question for the Irritated Genie, you're on live, 850.
Yes, can I be heard? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, excellent show. Matter of fact, I'm pretty speechless. I almost feel like I felt after I first read Mr. Fuller's work. This is actually pretty mind-blowing for me. I would just like to know, Irritated Genie, where do you see this, where do you see us in, 10 years? I mean, are we at critical mass now, in your opinion?
Brother, I'm telling you, and let me just say, I'm going to answer your question, but brother, I really appreciate this forum. I didn't know it existed, but I'm very happy to know that because sometimes we get in our own little vacuums and we do our work and we see what we see, but there are people out here that are trying to find the solutions to this. I'm going to tell you we're at critical mass, but I'm going to tell you even more than that. This is what makes the context of the world that we live in now so dangerous. The European science has gotten past the point of us being able to track it, meaning kind of with the General Amherst effect on the Native Americans. Most people don't know Pontiac and his warriors were going to actually defeat the Europeans. They were about to put them out this country. They had won 9 of the 11 forts, except for 2 forts they had left to win. Then they were going to push their plan was to push the Europeans all the way out of America. They were on the verge of a complete victory militarily against Europeans. And they came up with an idea, the Europeans did, of blankets with smallpox. I bring that up because they gave them the blankets and the natives did not understand, even in warfare, if someone comes to give you a gift, it was a gift. They did not understand. They couldn't even conceive of the science that a blanket could kill you. I'm saying that to say now we see them dropping bombs on fault lines in Haiti and causing earthquakes in the Caribbean, earthquake in the Caribbean, right? Same thing they plan on doing in South America. Even more importantly than that, I just got an email that we sent out where basically what you have is some white Jewish scientists, white so-called Jewish scientists, who have now patented the DNA of African people. Now, not every group of Africans, but like the Maasai. They patented the DNA of the Maasai and all these different groups, and they're getting DNA. And originally, we thought that, this whole thing, they're getting DNA, and I'm getting to you the answer to your question, but I just want to answer it completely. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that the reason that they're getting this DNA, I did it, my mother, hey, let's go see where we're from in Africa. We didn't realize what they're really doing. What they're doing is and here's the deep part. This is how I found out. An anthropologist who works in the field, so this is not some hearsay, told a group, and they say, I won't, if you repeat this, I won't admit that this is what's happening, but I'm telling y'all what's going on since it was a black group. He said, the white Jewish female, and I actually looked her up online, her name is Tishkoff, Tiscoff, I think. If you look up Dr. Tishkoff, you'll come up with her. She's the one that's patenting the DNA. They're going to all these different groups of Africans. In fact, all the people around the world are collecting their DNA, except they're not doing it with the white so-called Jews. Now, here's what they're doing, and they use us to fund it under the guise of telling us what part of Africa we're from. They're collecting the DNA so that they can isolate the genes that differentiate one group from the other, so that they can create biochemical warfare. Literally, they can come in your water supply and put things in the water supply that only kill, if they want to kill a black person with 60% melanin or more, they only kill them. Or if they want to kill an Asian, or if they want to kill a Pacific Islander, when they isolate these different gene specs, then they can target only the group that they want, or only the 2 or 3 groups that they want. They're creating the science. The reason I say there's such a problem is because you asking, are we at critical mass? We are, because we're no longer in the period of exploitation. In the period of exploitation, you got time, because they're trying to exploit you, and if you fight exploitation, they'll kill people, but they're trying to exploit, they're trying to get stuff from you. When they no longer have a need for you or a desire to have you around, you only have one option, and that is to put the kind of physical pressure on their life that makes them have to worry about surviving too, so they don't have enough time to be offensive with you, so it becomes a war. If you do not fully engage in the war, then they just wipe you out in massive numbers you can't imagine. They killed 150,000 of our Haitian brothers and sisters in one day. The French were the strongest military in the world at that time, and they couldn't beat our Haitian brothers and sisters. Now, in the blink of an eye, they can destroy their country. They found oil. People don't know they found incredible amounts of oil that they think that they found in Haiti. And my belief is that they're going to go in there and what they're trying to do is go tap into that oil, destroy that country, take it for their own, which is something they've been trying to do since our Haitian brothers and sisters won that revolution. My point being, all these things we can see happening, but we can't prove them because we don't have the science to prove that this is what they're doing. At the same time, we don't have the proof to put it on the table and say, ha-ha, we don't have the option and liberty to wait until they do this stuff because when they put something in they're getting biochemical weapons now to kill black people in a very sophisticated manner, the ones that they want. We know that they're doing it. They're documenting that they're doing it. You go online right now, put in the DNA of the Messiah being patented. You can read the article. Hey, we patented the DNA. That means that they can literally, through science, tell you what a Messiah is genetically. That means that we know what they do with this kind of stuff, so we don't have to go into it. It means that we need to get to the point, and I have to be very honest with people. It's critical mass. It's time for war. Meaning, not as a matter of my opinion, based on the precedent of their behavior, we are going to have to move beyond thinking and logic to the type of action that puts the same threat on them that we have so that they cannot master the art of annihilating us while we sitting around drinking our liquor, spinning our rims, going around acting like a bunch of buffoons and clowns around the world. We have to find a way to pressure them. One thing that we found historically, again, we look at warfare, so we got to look at who won with the European. And when you start looking at the individuals that win warfare with Europeans, the Chinese, when you start looking at really our own people, the Haitians, Queen Nzinga, you start looking at the people who saw what they were dealing with, made the decision like Chancellor Williams said, this is my enemy, I'm not going to play no games with them, and then began to put the type of pressure on their existence and their ability to hold what they have that they put on other people. And then we have a chance for survival. If we do not stop playing the games, stop intellectualizing, and I'm not talking about what we're doing here today. This program is here for educating people, the proper kind of education that helps people go out here and make decisions. But I'm saying, if we don't stop pontificating about stuff, I think this, and start saying, okay, now that we know we have enemies, how do we do to them what they're doing to us? How do we put the same kind of pressure against them to our best of our ability that makes them have to defend themselves and be a serious enough threat that it gives us time to regroup and make this a war instead of a behind whipping or an extermination which they're planning? So the answer to that, we're past critical mass. We're going to, in 10 years, if we have not begun the process of organized warfare, let me tell you where things are going. I can tell you exactly what's happening. You pay attention, you'll see it for yourself. They have a thing called AFRICOM, AFRICOM, AFRICOM. You go up there, it's the United States Africa Command. It was started by George Bush. They have a base in every country except Egypt in Africa. They have a base. What they are doing now is just like they did when they came to the United States, they're saying the most resource-rich place on this planet is the African continent. They're saying, we went over there, we took the greatest resource of that place, the black people. That's who developed the continent. Then we went back over in colonialism, we talk about integration again, and we exploited them out of their mind to get their resources. But the problem is that they're still there, and they can still try to fight like our Root Brothers, RUF, and Sierra Leone, and other groups, Thomas Sankara, and different other brothers and sisters who waged a battle for their own self-respect in Africa. Now the Europeans said, forget it. Why are we going over there taking stuff? We can now go, with the condition that black people are in now, we can go take their continent from them. What you are going to see in the next 10 years, the wars are already going in Africa that they're creating. They're going to continue to create the wars. Through Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, particularly Christianity and Islam, they're going to get millions of our people, Kenya, Nigeria, which is already happening, to murder each other all throughout the continent. you're going to start seeing a large influx in mass numbers of Europeans moving into the African continent. They're already, like in Ethiopia, they're already building dams that are going to flood out hundreds of thousands of people and kill them because their main supply of water runs through the city. Now the dam is going to flood it, and the Chinese are involved, and now the Asians. They're also in this with the European now, even though they don't understand it. All that is the time is very limited. When they give it us, they're going to go right after the Asians too. Whites don't play, fractions. But anyway, my point being, their objective is to explore and colonize Africa, settle Africa the way they did America, where there will be no Native Americans anymore, there will be no Native Africans. If we do not come together now, we don't have any time left, and begin pure physical resistance in an intelligent, scientific, and sophisticated manner, we will, in fact, be exterminated off this planet. And we won't be gone in 10 years, but in 10 years, we'll have massive numbers of Europeans moving into Africa. They're kind of killing. Let me just add this one thing, because I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but what happens is I don't generally get forums to share the type of things that I know and have enough time to really share with my people so they can get a real global view of what's going on, so they can say, okay, I see what the brother's saying here. I see why he said that now. I see why he's saying the pieces come together. If you look at what they're doing, and that's why I say it's very important for us to understand how they use their media. This whole 2012 thing, what is this thing about 2012? What they're doing is conditioning people's minds, cognitive conditioning. If they tell you something enough times, when it happens, you believe it was going to happen anyway, you accept it. Since they are planning massive extermination campaigns like they did in Haiti, 150,000, 200,000 black people killed in one day. Okay, now they're going to go throughout the African continent. They're going to be putting these biochemical warfare, so you're going to find plagues that wipe out 1 million black people in 3 months in a certain region. You're going to see these wars and all this stuff. So they're impregnating in people's mind this idea of the end of the world, 2012. So that when it happens, instead of black people saying, oh, this is white racism, white supremacy, waged warfare, instead of saying that, we're going to say, oh, man, the end of the world is coming. The Bible talks about this kind of. So they're conditioning it to us. And Brother Neely Fuller told us that this was coming. He said they're going to do population, what do you call it, population tailoring?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah, mass population tailoring. What I'm saying is, that's true. There's no question. They're already doing it. Like you said, they're doing it. But I'm saying the real end result of that for us is not they're going to kill a bunch of us, but effectively with the culture of us being destroyed through homosexuality, pedophilia, forgetting that we're African people and the links to our ancestral ideas, the way we treat one another, our respect for our women, the whole culture, the foods, everything about us, not having our own businesses, we're losing that. So the internal part we're losing. Now they're killing the physical parts of us. We will essentially be what the Native American is today in terms of relevance in this country. Don't misunderstand me. I have a great deal of respect for them, but I just want to be honest and say, if you live in America, you don't tend to think of them as relevant. They're more historical than they are real. And I'm not slighting any Native American that is living and is fighting on behalf of their people. I'm just saying the whites have done a great number on them in terms of destroying a great people. What they have in store for us, we will begin to vividly see. In 10 years, this conversation will go down and you will listen and say, well, this is exactly what the brother was talking about. Our options are not that limited, though. We have the resources in this country and the access to the kinds of tools, information. We have the internet. That's the most powerful tool ever made for communication. Garvey organized 5 million or so. He had 5 or 1 million members worldwide in the 1900s. They didn't have no internet. We have the type of resources now, the knowledge base, the access to his military structure and how it operates. We have everything that we need to fight the white race, except a collective understanding and agreement that we've identified them as the source of the problems on this planet, and that we accept their declaration of warfare, and that we will wage war with them in the manner with the same end purpose that they're waging war with us, and we will determine and declare ourselves to be those who will be victorious. We can do it, but if we don't do it today, we're in trouble. And the answer to your question, That's what I've done. I made the decision. I'm going to declare it myself, because if I don't declare it, it might not get declared. We're going to die. So I declare it's a war, and I'm going to fight it to the best of my ability. And that's what y'all brothers and sisters out there are doing, is listening and taking this information and applying it to your life. You're doing the same thing, and I believe we're going to win.
Wow. That was 850's question. Thank you for calling in with the question, sir. I'm thoroughly impressed. I suspected I would be. I thought that was a pretty high recommendation coming from Dr. Kamal Cambone, who told me about your work, Irritated Genie. He was the one who I was not informed, and he raved about War on the Horizon. He raved about the website. He said, yeah, you got to get him on the program. I think he'd be very constructive, and I think it was. We got to get you back on the program. Get you back to share more information. I know a lot of listeners, they communicated with me during the broadcast that they really appreciated you taking some of your time to speak with us and felt like they learned a ton. So, yeah, we gotta make efforts to get you back on the program down the road, sir.
Yes, sir. We're definitely welcome to be on. And I want to just say, in regards to Brother Cambone, have nothing but absolute respect for him. He's a real black man, and if all of us would take his example and be half of what that man is to our people, I think that we could really make some headway in this thing that we're doing. And I will be willing to come on. All you got to do, brother, is let me know when you want us back and what the topic is you want to talk about, and I will be more than happy to talk to your audience. And I think that you are doing it. This is my first time ever hearing you. Don't know anything about you, but just the type of callers that you have and the way that you handle your program, I'm impressed. I'm impressed by professionalism and people who are serious about our condition, and I thank you on behalf of War on the Horizon.
We will definitely be in touch. As I said, the first time I made an effort to communicate, when I looked at the website, I said, wow, I hope we can do some work together, because this looks extremely constructive, and anything we can do here at the C.O.W.S to promote your material, get more people to check out waronthehorizon.com. We will do so. I will definitely be looking to see the updates to the site that go in effect tomorrow, to see the new stuff that you have available. And I wish you continued success. Yeah, I'll be making sure I do everything I can to promote your efforts, and I look forward to hearing from you again soon, sir.
All right, well, let us do it. And like we always say, brothers and sisters, we love you, and we'll see you on the battlefield.
For sure. Our guest, author of War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault, the Irritated Genie. Our guest, fantastic broadcast. I thoroughly appreciate your time, sir, and we'll be in touch soon.
Yes, sir.
Outstanding, outstanding. We're going to take a quick commercial break, Context of White Supremacy, and we'll be back to wrap things up and promo the full plate for Easter. My goodness, man, oh man. Context of White Supremacy. We'll be right back.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade. I think we had a constructive program. The Irritated Genie. Please get the book, War on the Horizon, Black Resistance to the White Sex Assault. They also have DVDs, essays, all kinds of material. Check the website, waronthehorizon.com. Please support outstanding information. And, definitely, I hope he will be willing to come back and chat with us again, share more information. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with him. Plug the before I plug the shows, I rarely call out because we don't have a chat room anymore, so I'm not able to see the folks who are listening live during the program. But I can now. Khadijah, thank you. I always appreciate seeing she promotes the show on Facebook. I see Hakima, My Thoughts to Poochie. Let's see, we got DD99, Bird, thank you for listening to the program and tolerating my male entitlement. Let's see, Black Man 78, Lux Helix 33. Lux Helix, he's been listening for a while. I did want to say, I read the comment that he wrote on the show page. I read exactly what he said. Had to stay away. Too depressing when solutions are never given. But this show looks good. I guess he was talking about Irritated Genie. I hope, he's satisfied. If you're thinking that people are going to come on this program, either myself or guests, and offer a solution, this is what to do to solve this problem, I suspect you are going to be disappointed. I don't think I've ever tuned into a program and got a solution. I have concluded the thing to do is to inform non-white people about what racism, white supremacy is, and how it works. I have concluded that the more informed non-white people become about that problem, they will be able to come up with solutions on their own to solve their own problems, which is what you should want. That's what I want. I want to be able to do as much as I can on my own. I want to be a man, a grown man where I don't have to go to anybody to solve my problems. I can just take care of things. I can manage things. That's what I want. So if you're thinking somebody's going to come here and have the magic solution, magic pill, if you will, probably not the correct program for you. If you are seeking information about racism, white supremacy, the cow should be your spot, particularly this weekend. Oh, my. The Saturday guest, American black chick in Europe. This is a black female. She was in England. Now she's in France. She blogs about racism and her experience with racism, white supremacy in the area of the world known as Europe. She lists in her interest section interracial relationships. I'm going to predict 20 or more cowbell rings for the show on Saturday. 20 or more. That's the Saturday show, April 3rd, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Pacific. The American Black Chick in Europe. That's Saturday. Sunday, April 4th, Easter Sunday. Man, oh man, I strongly suspect all of the previous records for the cows will fall by the wayside on Sunday. Records for hits for one day, records for live listeners, call-ins, all of those records should go in the trash on Sunday. The first show on Sunday, Dr. Frances Cress-Welsing will be making her 4th trip to the cows. That's the early show for Easter Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific. The second show, Tim Wise will be making his 4th appearance on the context of white supremacy. This is the makeup show where we were originally supposed to broadcast March 22nd. So Easter Sunday, the plate runneth over at the cows. April 4th, Tim Wise and Dr. Frances Cress-Welsing making their 4th appearance apiece on the cows. 2 separate programs, though. Not the same program. That would have been, that would have been too much. But 2 separate programs, early show, late show. Hang out with the cows for Easter Sunday. And I got a tip. Monday, Dr. Karen Broadkin, she will be here. She is the author of How Jews Became White Folks. Monday program. Was going to be Tuesday, but that is Monday. And you shouldn't hear from me again until Wednesday. And white people permitting, you should hear from me Wednesday live from the White Privilege Conference in Wisconsin. That's going to be a hoot next week. I got my ticket. That's why I was late getting the program started today. I was getting my ticket for the White Privilege Conference. Ticket is purchased courtesy of the admitted white supremacist known as John Delport. He bought me an orange juice and everything. So I got OJ and a ticket for the White Privilege Conference. I already met with Dr. Moore, and my lodging and registration and everything is taken care of. So white people permitting, Wednesday, live from the White Privilege Conference. Should be a hoot. As you can see, I have a lot on my plate, so I don't have a lot of time, so we cannot hang out for 40 minutes and chat post-show. But everybody who called in, your mic is open. If you would like to share anything quickly, I will give you all 10 minutes, unless you got something that sounds like it's a solution to racism, white supremacy. If you got that, we can go over. But if it's just casual chit-chat, you'll have to save it for the weekend shows. But please feel free to share if you would like to comment on what you heard on today's program.
Hello, Gus.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, man?
Another day on the plantation, but it was a productive day today.
That's right.
At least for me, it was productive. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Thanks to the show. You know what I'm saying? April Fool's my behind.
I said that if I get a MacBook Pro and with the carrying case, and or racism, white supremacy is replaced with justice, unless, or let me make sure I'm saying that correctly. If I get my MacBook Pro and the system of racism, white supremacy is continuing, I would like to do a show every April Fool's Day, because the April Fool's Day shows have been constructive. I'm 2 for 2 on those thus far. Right.
Man, it was a very constructive show, and I'm not gonna say I was surprised, but it was very constructive, and I don't know. I just appreciate the show a lot, even though it's like I said, Nellie Fuller said, it either monsters or monstrosities. It is a monstrosity type of thing where we have to deal with this issue, but that's what we have to do. Unfortunately,
needs to be done, though. I think needs to be done immediately. Immediately. Any of the other folks that you wish to share? I think Mr. Nero, I think I got you. Love, Truth, Liberation, I think I got you. Non-Mighty Wick and Mr. 909. It might be one other person, I'm not sure. That's all good, too, if y'all don't have anything to share, because Flash Forward, it's Thursday. Flash Forward is coming on. I can go see Gabrielle Union. I'm perfectly content to wrap things up. If you don't want to share, that's perfectly fine. Anybody, the other folks, or 909, if you had any other observations or things you wanted to share.
When he was talking about Steven Spielberg and how he creates the monsters in this movie, I think he's a so-called Jewish person or whatever, and they have a term for that, which is golem. I mean, it's a part of their religion or whatever to create a monster. So they know how to do it. So they use the movies, you know what I'm saying, or you know what I mean, to create. It's so deep, like with Vin Rames or whatever, like buck breaking.
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? So I think I seen a picture of him with, with a white woman or whatever. So like that's the new buck breaking. And just the fact that they have that system down pat, and it's in their religion, and it's a science for them, and they have even a term for it, I found very interesting when he was speaking on that.
I think that's the second time, at least the second time, that someone has come on this program talking about the buck breaking process that racist white supremacists put black males through, and how that entailed sodomy. Dr. Mwalimu K. Baruti, when he was on the program in February, he talked about the exact same thing, and he's going to be back 2 weeks from today. He'll be back April 14th. He'll be back to talk about white sex, sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people. So hopefully people are paying attention. I also wanted to make sure I threw out Mark Crutcher, because he talked about Alpha 21. Mark Crutcher, the white person who put that video together, has been on this program in December, and I strongly suspect he is a racist white supremacist. If you listen to that broadcast, you might figure out why I have concluded that. I strongly suspect he is a white supremacist. I did want to say what you were talking about with the term golem that the so-called Jews have for a non-person might be constructive if you can phone in for the program on Monday with Dr. Karen Broadkin, How Jews Became White Folks. I suspect that she is a so-called Jewish person. I also suspect that she is white, so she might be able to answer that question. Her book might even have some information on that, because I suspect part of the becoming white process entails mistreating non-white people, especially black people. So that might come up on the Monday show.
Okay. Yeah, this is a class for me. I do this for my own reasons, and definitely, and I appreciated the fact that he seen the show. He felt like the show was up. I always kind of cautiously say these things because it is white supremacy we're talking about. So when but I did appreciate the fact that he said that this show was a breath of fresh air. You know what I'm saying? That he's seen the constructive value in the show. Did you catch that? That he was kind of surprised in a way that this show was, the way the show was ran and
I did catch that. I guess it's difficult for me, kind of what I was saying with Cree before. Like, the thing, I guess I'll share this again. Anybody, if you are a tip, I guess, again, I'll say, we don't give out solutions here. I give out suggestions. These are suggestions. My suggestion, any non-white person, if you are thinking about working to replace white supremacy with justice, even thinking about, being a man, being a woman, I would not get too concerned with what other people have to say about your efforts. Particularly if you are a non-white person and you want to work against racism, white supremacy, that would be the first thing I would tell you. Do not get wrapped up into what other non-white people have to say about what you're doing, because hordes of non-white people have written about and even come on the program and complained about my efforts as a host, the guests, definitions, this, that, and the fourth that they don't like, making compensatory investment requests for tickets or a computer or anything else. You just can't be concerned about that. And that means not being concerned if people like what you're doing or if they don't like what you're doing, because white people will come, and non-white people will come around and cheer non-constructive efforts that non-white people are engaged in, even destructive efforts. White people, certainly racists, will come around and applaud it if a non-white person is doing it. And they will ignore something that is constructive. White people and non-white people will do that. So I would say don't get caught up in that. Just, think for yourself. If what you think you're doing is constructive and that's what should be done, do it. Don't worry about what other people have to say. But I did noticed that he seemed appreciative of the program, which is cool, but not needed. Not needed, and I don't. I was just appreciative that he came through and shared the information. That I was pleased as punch. He could have said he thought the program was terrible. As long as he shared the information, all good. Life is great.
All right. And I read that. I was going to ask him because I read that comic too from Lux Helix before the show even began, and that was one of the questions that I was going to ask, but I didn't think it was as important or whatever as I didn't know. I kind of put it down in a hierarchy or whatever. But I was going to ask him, after all the information that he gave, did he feel the need to now give a solution? You know what I'm saying? After all that information, it's like, bam. There's the solution right there. You know what I'm saying? So I was going to ask him that, like, do you feel the need after giving information like that to now say, now this is what you should do?
I think he gave us. I'm sorry. I think he gave a solution. He said we need to get ready for war. He said we got 10 years. I think we need to get our. I'm sorry, I was just saying we need to get mentally ready and emotionally prepared to just war. And that's what the other Kamal had said too, that clip you see all over YouTube. He was like, I'm sorry to say this. This is one non-white female's opinion. Kamal was like, we need to figure out how to exterminate white people off of this planet.
Nero?
I just want to give I think we should have public responses and private responses. So my public response to this brother's show was I felt he has a very healthy frame of mind when it comes to dealing with the Gentiles / white people. Non-white people cannot afford to see these people as individuals. You have to see them functioning as a unit. And I know on the last show we got into people admitting that they're racist, and I noticed that Dr. Ali had a problem with that, and I'm looking forward to him coming back on the show. But let me just say this in regards to anyone that admits that they are a racist. To me, immediately you go in the enemy category. Period. And I believe, as I said, that Irritated Genie has the proper frame of mind and how to deal with this. And I think we all know that what he was really saying was absolutely what the sister just said, that we need to prepare ourselves. And I think we all know individually where to start, at least, on some of the things we need to start doing, thinking, and saying. Not only to ourselves, but to the people that are closest around us and who we may have influence or be able to influence in our prospective circles.
That's right. Gus, do you and Love Truth and you too, Nero, do you agree with the statement? It says something. It says what my enemy is for, I'm against, and what my enemy is against, I am for.
It would be premature for me to answer that question because it would, depend on what we're speaking of, and I have to keep in mind that my enemy lies all the time. So what he or she may say that they're for, they may actually be against.
And it's also hard to make such a sweeping general statement, like about everything. But in this society, it seems like the way that they have it structured, everything is upside down and backwards. Like the stuff that they promote to be eaten should not be eaten. It is actually poison. The way that they treat medicine, like the way they do their medical system, like this is healthcare. It's not really healthcare. It's like sickness management. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not really like promoting health. It's like treating symptoms of disease in a society that creates disease. Like, everything they do is backwards. Even the map. So this one YouTube video, it shows how the way we look at the map these days, the atlas, is upside down from the way we did it in ancient times. It has Europe on top, where we used to keep Europe on the bottom. And that's insignificant, but that's just like one small illustration of how it's all just backwards. Just the individualism of the society versus how we used to be collective-minded. So in a lot of ways, yeah, very opposite them.
Yeah.
I hope if nothing else that this show encourages non-white people, if they are not gun collectors, they should become one. If they are not interested in survival techniques, they should at least become interested in survival techniques. If nothing else, these make constructive hobbies for non-white people.
Right. Save our seeds. I've been trying to get people to save seeds. You know, that's important.
I totally agree.
And when he was talking about the Zeus and Ganymede, I try to tell non-white people to actually read the thinking of white people, read their philosophy, read that stuff, and you'll get an idea of their thinking, because they, you know, it's out there in their so-called philosophy. And I had never really heard of that Zeus and that Ganymede, but I have read Plato, and I read a lot of Socrates and stuff like that, and in their thinking, they have a certain way of thinking, and I think our people don't really read what they say about themselves. So when Gus says we talk to white people, and I say I read white people, people kind of get a little irritated by that. But if you want to know what they're thinking, you know, their mythos and whatnot, I think that's constructive. It has been for me, just to get an idea of how, you know, how they think, and, you know, some of the actions that they do. What do you think about that, Nero or Gus?
Let me just say that, and I don't want anybody to get the wrong opinion when the brother talked about war. The war that we need to be able to beat these people in is we need to be able to outthink them.
Right.
We have a long way to go. I don't know if 10 years, if that is the timetable of our Armageddon, is enough time. But I do know this. We will not win a war against these people if we are unable to outthink them. In every area of activity. Now, I could be incorrect about that, but that seems logical to me.
One problem that I see is that most of my brothers and sisters are not aware that there's a war against them. They're just completely confused, and they're in love with white people and white people's culture, which is why I think the education and the waking up is so important.
I agree with you, sister.
If black people would just love black people, you know what I'm saying? If black people would just realize they had an open enemy, that would do so much.
This is 850. I believe, and that was why I asked the question about the, in just his opinion, following the logic, what would be the logical conclusion if we continue on this track? And I believe, as we're discussing, other non-white individuals not really understanding that we are literally, the name of the book is War on the Horizon, I believe. Well, truth of the matter is, we're currently at war right now. It's just not evident. But from listening to him, it sounds like in a short matter of time, it will become very evident, and deny it as much as we may try, it will become next to impossible. I mean, another couple of Haiti-type earthquakes or quote-unquote natural disasters, and pretty soon even the most asleep person will have to deal with the fact that something just isn't right. Maybe they won't know who or what to blame, but if what he is saying is true, they can only hide it for so long, in my opinion. It will, and I don't know, maybe I'm being too hopeful that we will see it, but I don't know. It just seems like the war that we are currently in will not always be invisible. But I could be incorrect.
850?
Yes.
This is Mr. Nero. I just want to take a quick response at this unless Gus or someone else had a response. Okay, I'll take silence as a possible no. I believe, sir, as long as black people or non-white people are in the church, in the synagogue, or in the temples, they will justify whatever is happening as some kind of an act of their God. Mm-hmm. No matter how bad it gets. So I believe the first step for non-white people is to get us out of these religious institutions.
And I just want to say, thank God there might be some hope for that with the younger generations. The older folks, my parents and et cetera, them folks is deacons and deaconesses and just very deep into that religion. But the new guard, like the new, like, quote-unquote black leaders, people like Phil Valentine, they're more, like, coming from a metaphysical perspective. They're not, like, beating on the Bible the way Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King and that older, like, black vanguard was. So hopefully, you know.
I have heard so-called black Christians justify some of the worst conditions imaginable and say things like, God won't put more on your plate than you can handle.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just talking to some brothers downtown the other day, and I was like, you know, dude, the situation that we are in is horrible. And these brothers were telling me, well, we don't live that long, and just wait for your reward in heaven, and et cetera. And then also, if you just look at India, that's another country where they believe, for instance, if your life is suffering, it's because you have bad karma because of their religion, and so they tolerate just like horrible conditions of people, and you know, with like the deletes and the untouchables, it's like, oh, these people are paying off bad karma, and no one questions it or really fights against it there. I think there's like 200 million untouchables in India, in a horrible state, but it's like built into that religion. I think it's Hinduism or something. It's like, oh yeah, this casteism. This caste system was passed down by God. This is the way it is, and they're like, okay.
They have done a great job on them.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, love, truth. I had an opportunity to go to India, and I did like I said I'll never go to India as long as they have that caste system with those untouchables. That's just one place I won't go, man, because of that caste system. And when you look at those caste people, they're beautiful, man. It's like they're the most beautiful Indians I've ever seen. Have you ever seen them? Like, have you ever seen pictures of?
not so much.
Man, they are beautiful. They're like African. Oh man, they're gorgeous. They're beautiful people. They're strong. They have that melanin, and their facial features are like, man, they're gorgeous. But yeah, I said I'm never going to India, man. Well, as long as they have that caste system. And I wanted to ask you, Gus, about the extermination piece. Do you really think? Because the reason why I wanted to ask you this, and I know we're short on time, but I wanted to ask you as far as the mud shark, because you have the mud shark on your, that's your logo, and in the movie Harry Potter, they called them mudbloods, the non-magical people. They're called mudbloods. And do you really think that extermination is on the mind? Reason why I would ask that is because this white guy said to me one time, he said, we're only going to kill enough that, he said, we'll only kill as much as we can mud up. He used the term mud up. He said we can only kill enough non-white people that we can still mud up. So our blood won't be totally white. He said we only kill enough so we can mud up. So as far as he was concerned, he's like, nah, it's not extermination that we after, but we just going to kill enough, but we still need a certain gene pool that won't have us basically be pure blood, because when you get pure blood, you get a lot of genetic, deficiencies.
In terms of the extinction piece, I feel like white people most likely have had the ability to kill all the non-white people worldwide if they wanted to do so. I feel like they've had that ability for a while. I don't think that's something that, if they have that ability, and I suspect that they do, I don't think they just stumbled on that in the last week or month or year. White people enjoy practicing racism. I don't think they're going to kill all the non-white people, because if you kill all the non-white people, you can't practice racism, white supremacy. So I don't think they're going to kill all the non-white people. I certainly think there's enough evidence that suggests that they certainly enjoy having sex with non-white people. So I think those are two pretty big motivating factors right there. If you're removing people that they seem to enjoy having sex with, and they seem to enjoy practicing racism, white supremacy, I don't think they're going to kill us all, but they certainly are willing, and I think they're going to kill large numbers. So that I don't feel like it's anything I squabble about. I feel like they're killing enough of us that it can give the appearance that they're trying to kill us all, and if non-white people conclude that, no argument here. I personally don't think that's the case, but it's irrelevant. Large numbers of non-white people are going to die. That is incorrect, and we should be doing as much as we can to oppose that.
Yes, sir.
I would agree with that component as well. In fact, I compare the system of white supremacy almost to the same social system that wolves create, where they create an alpha male, an alpha female, a beta, and everybody's in between it, and then an omega male. And so anytime any of the wolves have a dispute, they'll take it out on the omega male, the one that, the last one in the pecking order. So he catches all the abuse from all of the other wolves in order for there to be harmony, or some form of harmony amongst all of the other wolves in the pecking order. And I see our plight similar, where they put all the other colors in between and put black at the bottom, and they've trained all of the other non-white people to take out their frustrations on those people classified as black. So in order to continue to have that order, they will have to continue to have some black people on the planet.
Mhm. That's right. And Gus, do you think it's kind of interesting that Quentin Tarantino and some of these other writers and producers, black people kind of embraced him. Because before I was really conscious, I thought Quentin Tarantino was like the composer of literary movie dialogue, not knowing that he was, totally bashing us. I mean, before you got really conscious, was Quentin Tarantino one of your favorites? And even that guy that went crazy on stage talking about nigger. A lot of black people, Michael Richardson. A lot of black people liked his character. It seems like the one that we embrace, just like the so-called Jew or whatever, Search from Third Base.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm laughing too. You because you know what I'm saying, man. It's like we embrace the very ones that, but it's specifically Quentin Tarantino. He's got a lot of raves about his dialogue in movies. Did you kind of see that too, a little bit, or were you already understanding?
I'm gonna answer your question, 909. I thought Mighty Wick. I thought I heard him. If you had a question or comment, I wanted to get him in, and then I'm gonna answer your question, 909. Mighty Wick, did you have something you wanted to share, or was I hearing things?
No, not this time.
Oh, okay. I blogged about Pulp Fiction, film review, racism-notes.blogspot.com. You can check out the film review I did for Pulp Fiction. I can't say I was a big Quentin Tarantino fan before I became less confused about racism and white supremacy, because I still have not seen Reservoir Dogs, and I think it took a while before I got to see more of his work. But I was a big fan of Pulp Fiction. Like, I owned Pulp Fiction. I'll say. And it took a long time. It took me, like, reading Mr. Fuller's work and hearing the lectures, listening to Dr. Welsing's lectures, going to counter-racism.com, just really studying white supremacy for a while before I went back and watched the film. It was just like, oh my God, this is glaring white supremacy. Like, Jesus Christ, they've look what happened to Vin Rames, and then the last vignette where Marvin's head gets blown off, and they just nigger, and he's married to a non-white person. That's the slick thing that I've heard people, I've seen other people give commentaries on it, and they don't they miss the fact that Quentin Tarantino's character is married to a black female, Bonnie. She's non-white. You can see it clearly when she comes in. Well, I don't know. Maybe you can't see it clearly. Maybe that's why so many people miss it. But if you pay close attention, she is non-white. And I mean, that adds a whole nother dimension to him giving this long barrage of nigger, dead nigger storage. Storing dead niggers ain't my business. Why is there a dead nigger? Nigger. And he's married to a non-white person. That adds a whole nother dimension to it. So I missed all that when I was confused. I used to watch it, and I snickered about it, thought it was great. The more informed I became about racism and white supremacy, it just became, wow, glaring white supremacy in all its splendor. And you see that trend in his work, too. I would say Quentin Tarantino is great to watch for white supremacy, because Inglourious Bastards, Kill Bill, they have a great scene when I was researching for the program with Dr. Elaine Kim, where Uma Thurman's character, she castrates a non-white so-called Asian male. Like, he has his sword up and he's trembling, and it's in a phallic position, and she just chops his sword down, and then she doesn't even kill him. She turns him over and spanks him with her sword. Like, just incredibly emasculating scene. But that's in Kill Bill. Jackie Brown, that's another one. There's Sam Jack. I'd ring my cowbell. He has he has a white girlfriend in Jackie Brown. There's a whole lot of craziness going on in Jackie Brown. 909, you talked about Reservoir Dogs, which I have not seen, but you talked about racist incidents in there. So I'd say just his body of work shows a lot of racism, white supremacy. Yeah, that I think a lot of us miss. That you talked about a lot of non-white, a lot of black people, they dig his films, they dig Reservoir Dogs and some of the other work that he's done. I think it just shows with that confusion, anything can happen. You can go in and Birth of a Nation, Precious, some of the Monsters Ball, some of the worst films, some of the most degrading cinema will be entertainment. We'll think nothing of it. That's how much damage confusion can do to non-white people in a system of white supremacy.
Yes, sir. And the fact that he had a white wife, the nurse or whatever, they didn't show her face, but they showed her body, and you could see her skin, and you could tell that was a black woman. And that's supposed to be gives him license to use that type of language.
Well, he's a white man. I think that's what gives him license to do this. I'm white in a system of white supremacy. Whether I got, a negress on my arm or whether I got, another white woman, I'm white. I can do what I want. I can say what I want. Who's gonna stop me from doing it? Spike Lee? I mean, really? I mean, that's what white supremacy means. I think the comment Irritated Genie, he was talking about the laws that were being put in place so that no so-called country could oppose homosexual activity. That's what white supremacy means. We make the rules worldwide, and if you don't like it, well, we can handle this like some gentlemen, or we can get off into some gangsterness. Make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Make a decision.
Wow.
But, yeah, this is longer than I want to stay. Has been constructive, though. We will be back for a weekend. Saturday, we'll be here. The American black chick in Europe, I have already predicted 20 cowbells. 20 cowbells. She'll be here Saturday, 3 p.m. Excuse me, I'm looking at the incorrect time. Yes, I got it right. 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 12 noon Pacific. And Easter Sunday, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she will be making her 4th trip. That'll be 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Pacific. Admitted white supremacist known as Tim Wise will also be making his 4th trip on Sunday. He will be here at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, full Easter Sunday on the cows. Irritated Genie, please check his website. Hopefully we'll get him back again. WarOnTheHorizon.com. Thoroughly enjoyed the broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please check Back of the Bus's blog, nonwhitealliance.wordpress.com. And please support Cree's efforts here at Blog Talk Radio, counter-racist, evolving engineer. Thank you all for supporting the broadcast, and we'll be back Easter weekend. Wow. Context of white supremacy. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible, and email justice.asap@yahoo.com. Once again, justice.asap@yahoo.com. Thank you. Cows signing out.